We should be up on all media platforms. In fact, all right, we should be up on all media platforms. We're just making sure that everyone who wants to access the show has access to it. So just bear with for just a few seconds here, and then we'll be going right into the program. I do thank everyone for showing up. Yes, I've got to redo. I really have to get a new intro set up so I can automate a little bit of this. But, you know, we work on everything as much as we can. We try and make it all come together. What can I say? I don't have the tens of thousands of employees that you would see at CNN or MSNBC. We don't have the unlimited funds of federal funding or funding from any political party, any candidate. So, you know, life is a little bit tricky in that regard. But that being said, I believe, yep, we are live everywhere. So we are up on Rumble, we are up on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, a bunch of the different formats. Please like, share, subscribe. If this is the first time that you're seeing our program, we want to welcome you and thank you for being part of the audience. We appreciate you, whether you stay for 5 minutes or you stay for the entire live stream, you watch it live or afterwards, it doesn't matter. I appreciate that you're taking time out of your day to talk with us. And I only ask, if you can, please like, share, subscribe, because quite honestly, we're fighting against the algorithm, the major media algorithm that wants to suppress any thought, any unapproved message or conversation. Whether you're on the left, the right, center, libertarian, I don't care where your ideology is, they don't want you to speak about anything unless it's already been approved, unless it's on a path that leads exactly where they want in terms of the fortification of 2024. We don't do that on this program. So we do ask that you like, share, and subscribe. That's it. And if you want to do more, that's up to you. So, hello, Graham. Thank you for being the first one to make a comment today. I appreciate you being here with us. We will be checking in on comments from Rumble throughout the show. We are live streaming simultaneously there. Today, I want to talk a little bit about long form. This is what we do. Long form political commentary. We remember the things that led us to where we are today to inform us about what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen tomorrow. It's very important. History repeats itself if you forget what history has taught you. It's an old adage. It's absolutely 100% true. And that's what we're seeing right now, because everything we are going through right now in 2024 is inevitable. It is the result of inevitable actions, consequences. Because we saw this coming. We knew this is where it was going to lead us. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about that. That means that we're going to be talking about the U.S. economy. We're going to be talking about border security and immigration. We're going to be talking about the Middle East, the escalation of violence in the world, the potential for 3 simultaneous regional wars that we have talked about, the fact that the news media is talking about World War III, the 2024 election and how it influences all of those factors. We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to take your comments from Graham and from everyone else who wants to make a comment. Whether you agree or disagree, that is okay. Again, we do not censor you because you don't agree with me. That's perfectly fine. But have a reason. Not a feeling, but a reason. And we're open to your questions about any topic that's affecting anyone around the world, especially if it affects America. So we're going to be doing all of that today. Let me first start off, though. Normally we talk about what's happening in the international region and how that affects the United States going forward, and how the United States affects the international stability. But before we do that today, because the Super Bowl is coming up, and it will be coming up very, very soon, I wanted to mention, and we covered this in a short 1 minute politics in a minute, and you can see it on Rumble, you can see it on YouTube, where we were talking about the Super Bowl. And I just want to point out and just get this right off the top. By the way, hello, Grace, you and Dow. I'm glad that you're both listening in. I appreciate and thank you both for being part of the audience as well. I wanted to bring up Super Bowl 58. It's a massive event here in the United States. People around the world do watch it. Many people are watching for the commercials. Some people are watching for the football game itself. It's entertainment. It is meant to be the biggest distraction in America from everything that is happening in the world. You don't have to worry for one event. You don't have to worry about inflation. You don't have to worry about your bills, energy costs. You don't have to worry about climate change. Whether the Ayatollah prefers one team or another, any of the international politics, anything of the crime in your neighborhood, everything is supposed to stop. It's almost like the World Cup, where for the rest of the world, when the World Cup happens, we see that international stability increases, crime decreases, nations have ended wars. Literally, they have declared peace so that they can watch the World Cup together. Well, in America, we don't have the World Cup because we don't have a team good enough for that. Whether it's the men's team or the women's team, we don't have a team really good enough. But what we do have is American football. And the Super Bowl is that World Cup moment for the United States every year. And it's really sad that this year we're going to be seeing that the World Cup is going to be, the Super Bowl is going to be infected with politics, propaganda. Not even just politics, but the worst form of politics, propaganda. You see, for some reason, the NFL has decided, that they're going to go and introduce the Black National Anthem for the second time in a Super Bowl. And they should have realized from the reaction the first time. It is an insult. It is divisive. It is everything wrong with the left-leaning politics and the way that it's being interjected, shoved down the throats of Americans across this nation. It's bad. And let's start off with the very simple thing. There is no nation black. There is no nation that is the black people. And I know there's some people on the left, some people who are low information voters, and they're going to say to you, well, Mike, there's Africa. How can you say that? That's so racist. Africa is a bunch of black people. Well, hang on. Africa is a continent. Africa is not a nation. There are 36 nations in Africa. It's like saying the North American continent, well, that's, all white people. North America includes Mexico. It includes Canada and the United States. So to say that, Africa's black people, it's a nation. No, it's not. Let's understand that very clearly. So there is no black nation. Therefore, there can be no black national anthem. And to insert that into the United States game, entertainment, where the national anthem of the United States is being sung, and then a second national anthem. The only time we see these kinds of things is like during the Olympics, where you would have the first place winner, second and third, and their national anthems would be played in the order of whether or not they won or how well they won. And it's when you're doing this in a nation, we're not playing against someone else. America's not having the white Super Bowl and the black Super Bowl, or white people versus black people in the Super Bowl. That's not what's happening. But by introducing the Black National Anthem as if it is a separate entity than being American itself, it instantly divides us. It is an instant statement that some people are not the same as everyone else. You're different. And you have to be treated differently. You have to be treated with kid gloves. We have to go out of our way to recognize black Americans, Americans who happen to be black, and give them a national anthem because somehow they're not being recognized enough. This is insulting. There's only one national anthem in America. Only one. And that's the only one that should be playing at an American national event. One. And anything else is about propaganda. It's about inserting the feelings of political organizations trying to change the way you think and the way that you feel and the way that you vote. This is part of fortifying the 2024 election. Oh, look, you're black, you're different, you have to be treated differently. Oh, and don't forget, the only people who are going to treat you different, that are going to treat you special, are going to be Democrats. Vote Democrat in 2024. People will look at me and go, Mike, but you're seeing politics in everything. Because they're injecting it into everything. And it's really, really sad. Would I say the same thing about the Olympics? No, I wouldn't. Would I say the same thing about the World Cup? No, I wouldn't. Why? Those are two nations playing against each other. Out of respect, the two nations would have their national anthems because they are playing for their nations. There is no nation of black, especially not in the United States. Let's get rid of this. Let's stop dividing people and let's stop playing the race card on everything from entertainment to politics to schooling. Remember Morgan Freeman? Remember when Morgan Freeman said, he was being asked by 60 Minutes, and they said, how do we end racism? Stop referring to me as a black man, and I'll stop referring to you as a white man. We're both Americans. We're both men. Just stop there. That's it. And you know what? What they're doing with Super Bowl 58 is not that. It is about division. It is equity in action. Constantly, never-ending division, separating people and pitting them against each other based on categories that are arbitrary, ranked arbitrarily, to get a political outcome. Get the politics out. I'm not watching Super Bowl 58. I'm not. I didn't watch Super Bowl 57. In part, I haven't been watching football since 2016, when Colin Kaepernick started kneeling. And I have no reason to come back. And a lot of people feel the same way. Maybe you guys disagree with me, but I wanted to get that off my chest. Let's see some of the comments here. Let's see. We've got John Cordisco. He's here with us. Thank you, John, for being with us. You're doing really great on your channel, John. I know you're on your way to 10,000 subscribers. I hope one day to join you, but this year, 2024, we just wanted to get to 5,000 subscribers. I know, John, you're on your way to 10,000. Let's see. John says, I'm still holding out for Maxine Waters and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to be the Democratic nominees. Oh my God, that would be terrifying for 2024. But remember, AOC is angling towards either a Senate seat in 2028 or the presidency in 2028. It all depends on how much money she can raise. She's already been going to Florida. She's already going after all of the donors for Kirsten Gillibrand, who also had a failed presidential bid in 2016. But she's been after them. So depending on how much money she can get from them, she may run for Senate or she may run for the presidency in 2028. We'll see. Cool Roy is with us. Hello, Cool Roy. Cool Roy says, government supremacy is always the problem. They will come for us all eventually. That's why they're shipping in illegal immigrants that they need to screw us. Cool Roy goes on to say, communism always destroying the family and our freedoms. Racism for redistribution, isn't that what Al Gore really invented? Well, I can't really say about that entirely. I don't know what was going through Al Gore's mind as he took credit for everything that he had nothing to do with, and as he lied to the American people and the world in terms of The Inconvenient Truth, a movie that has been debunked multiple times by scientists around the world. Ever since it came out, it has been factually incorrect, and its predictions have been factually incorrect. It's fear-mongering. So I don't have a lot of, I don't put a lot into Al Gore because he's not very credible. But I do believe that we are seeing, it's not just government supremacy. It is an ideology, a progressive ideology overall, a socialist, more communist ideology that says they want to break everything about America to make it more like China, essentially. Because they keep promising, they have all the best promises. And I got to give it to all the socialist countries, all the communist countries out there. They have wonderful writing. They have the best stories, the best taglines, the little slogans that they use. They have great ones. But none of it's true. It never works. But they keep dividing us, and they try and keep dividing us so we don't take the time to notice everything they say is just false. It never comes true. And I've been saying this a lot lately, but Thomas Sowell once said, and he was very correct when he said this, the leftists will never admit that they are wrong. It is never their fault, and they have never failed at something. It just means they need more time, they need more resources, which means money, almost always, and they need more of your freedom. And it's your fault for not giving them money and time and your freedom, your rights and liberties. It's your fault for not giving them enough of that, because eventually, at some point, the left will be right. That is their mantra. That is their idea. That's why they keep redoing socialism. They keep redoing communism, saying, we've got it right this time. We're going to figure it out. We have to do it again and again until we get it right, except it never works. In the history of mankind, it never works. It never hits any of the targets that it promises. It never achieves any of the things that they want. And almost all of their policies are exactly the same. I'll point out gun control. Gun control doesn't work. It has never worked. And I can say that confidently and absolutely, not just because I've spent the last 2 decades reading the CDC reports, the crime in the United States from the FBI, looking at the New York GIVE report, not just because the data tells us that gun control doesn't work. The fact is, if it worked, they wouldn't need to keep making more and more laws trying to stop law-abiding citizens from having a firearm. It wouldn't happen. We wouldn't need it. But gun control doesn't work because the number of black-on-black homicides due to firearms hasn't dropped. It's about 7,000 every single year. That number doesn't change. Doesn't get talked about, but it doesn't change. It's very consistent. And that's mostly, predominantly, about 80% of that is by firearms. But they don't want to talk about that. It's just the example of how much gun control has failed. You still get mass shootings, almost the same numbers. They're very consistent. Mass shootings, school shootings, they haven't gone up, they haven't gone down. They've stayed essentially the same. One year might be slightly more than another year, but they don't, on average, it hasn't changed in 5 decades. Gun control's failed. But you're not supposed to think about that. You're not supposed to have a conversation about that. You're supposed to say, guns are bad. Anyone who owns a gun is a bad person trying to do a bad thing. Give up your guns, give up your rights, and the government will protect you. How? Are they going to have a policeman following you everywhere you go? No. They're going to have a policeman in every corner? No. You're just going to have to trust them. And we can see how far that trust has gotten us. Let me see. Yeah, Roy says that several people have been banned over the years, shadow banning for conservative voices. Have they been doing it to me? Yes, they absolutely have been. By the way, if you don't believe that, look at our live streams from 5 years ago versus today. We got more people watching the show at that time than we do now. Per video, we get more people in the past with less subscribers than we get today. It is harder to find our channel, all 2,000 videos that we've done over the last 10 years, 15 years. It's harder to find them today than it was 5 years ago. And that's because they're fortifying the 2024 election. In fact, they are circling the drain as we speak. They are increasing the amount of suppression that they are putting into the media and social media, especially as we get closer to the 2024 election. They're finding new and different ways to try to silence people's voices. We remember 2 weeks ago, what did they do? They killed one of our live streams because the last 3 seconds, literally the last 3 seconds, they made up a complaint saying that, oh, YouTube does not allow you to hold a firearm, and so the video was killed. One, the video didn't have a firearm on screen in the timestamp they provided. Two, that isn't one of the guidelines of YouTube. So they just made it up and assumed that we wouldn't challenge them and that they could just bully us into being silenced because they didn't like what we had to say. You know, the only way to fight suppression is you keep speaking and you speak even louder. So that being said, let me continue to move forward here. So I wanted to bring up the Super Bowl because it's going to come up next week, and you will see, I think if you were to see the real-time graph of the number of people who are watching, I guarantee you're going to see a dip right after the national anthem. As soon as they start with the black national anthem, you're going to see the number of viewers dip down. People will check out something else and come back after that gets done because it is divisive and people don't want to be divided. And there is no benefit to this. There is no reason why we should do it. None. If any progressive, anyone on the left thinks I am wrong, if they have a reason to tell me what is the nation of black, if you can tell me where that is, please, I'm more than happy to see that. And if you can explain to me why the black national anthem, as they say, should be played at the Super Bowl, please give me that reasoning, because I don't know it. Because every single player, every black player, they're all Americans. Why do they need a national anthem separate of the one that we already have? Just does, but this is something we're not supposed to talk about. You're just supposed to say, oh, absolutely, that's true, let it go. And if anyone questions it, well, you're a ist and you're a phobe. Oh my God, how racist are you that you don't want to have two national anthems that compete with each other? I'm sorry. It's just a silly argument. But let me continue because that's not the only thing I wanted to talk about. Just starting off the show. And I wanted to bring that up because I thought it was kind of important because it's going to affect us next week. We're going to see lots of people talking about that. By the way, I will be doing my live stream just like normal, as always. So I'm not going to let that stop me. But I also wanted to bring up that there was a poll we did earlier in the week. As you can see here, let me bring that up. And you can see, right now, the news media is trying to find, the Biden-Harris administration, the Democrats are trying to find the subject that they can push that will make you feel better, that will motivate you to vote in the 2024 election. They've been trying everything. They've tried J6. That wasn't interesting to most people. They let it go. They stopped talking about it because it didn't affect America, because there wasn't an insurrection by definition and by court decisions. Every court case, we know this. There is no insurrection. There was a peaceful transition of power. Their argument doesn't work. We have thousands of hours of video that now is available to us showing us that 90%, 95, 99% of everybody who was walking through the halls of Congress, those 300,000 people that surrounded Congress that day, they didn't cause a problem. And the only people that were killed that day were killed by the Capitol Police. And in every single one of those instances, it was unnecessary. Capitol Police officers beating on women as they were unconscious, laying on the ground. We had Capitol Police officers stepping out, the Capitol Police officers leaving the doorway to move aside so that Ashley Babbitt could be shot, and then coming back into the room. And the news media carefully editing the video so you only see when she gets shot. You don't see the minute and a half beforehand that the Capitol, 6 Capitol police officers were standing there. The crowd was peaceful and they were blocking the doorway, and then they got a message. They checked their earphones. They walked down the stairs and away from everyone in that crowd, and then Ashley Babbitt got shot. Oh, that minute and a half beforehand, you don't need to see that. You don't need to see how many of the people who were in the January 6th, who were in the halls of Congress, were being escorted, walking past dozens of police officers with no one even blinking, no one even looking twice. No one cared. So J6 didn't work. And no one believes that the Bidenomics is working. You pay your bills. You know how expensive food is. You know how expensive electricity and gas, clothing, everything you need to survive, your rent, your mortgage. You know it's more expensive today than it was just in 2023. Forget about 2019. It's more expensive than last year. Inflation is going higher. And guess what, folks? We'll talk about it a little bit later in the show. It's going to be even higher in 2024. That is a guarantee. I don't care what the Republicans say. I don't care what the Democrats say. It is a fact. It's already been decided. It is inevitable because they already made that decision, and we're just living through the consequence. They already made the decision to have 6% inflation in 2024. That was already decided in 2022. And now we're just living through the steps, the consequences, the dominoes falling. But what we did here is we took a quick poll, and I know it's not an official scientific poll, only had 15 people respond. Please, if you want, you can still go and respond to it, I believe. But what we see is that the number one issue, and this matches up with all the national polling across America, left and right. What's the number one issue? Immigration. Of all the things that the Democrats are trying to put in front of you, the number one thing that Americans are concerned about, immigration. Number two thing that Americans are worried about, economy. You're worried about inflation. You're worried about your bills, your jobs. As 25,000, actually over 25,000 people have been laid off since the beginning of this year. We're only in day 21 of January, and over 25,000 people have been laid off so far. Almost 1,000 people per day have been laid off in this year alone. That's Bidenomics for you. We have seen inflation increase since the day Joe Biden got into the White House. We've seen a 16% increase in inflation. You're paying more, double digits. This is higher, and this is more inflation than people were going through in the 1970s under stagflation with the Carter administration. But no one wants to talk about that. Can't make that comparison. Don't look backwards. Biden's doing great. You just don't understand. The press secretary told you that. So these are the number one and two most important things. I think that if I had the room on that poll, and I was able to include, I don't know, Middle East foreign policy, the potential for war, I think that would have been the third most important thing that people would have identified, because that seems to be what's very important for most people right now. But I wanted to include that to give you an idea of what we're going to see. And that's why we're starting to see the Biden administration talk about the southern border. They finally made a massive admission. Joe Biden finally admitted something that everyone has known since March of 2021. He finally made the admission. He finally told people the truth after lying for years. And even though he's finally told us the truth, don't expect it to get better. And I will cover that a little bit later in the show as well. We got a lot to go through, folks. But with that said, and by the way, yes, we will be talking about New Hampshire. We will be talking about Iowa. We will be talking about the Republican nominee in the primary and what's going to be happening in New Hampshire with Biden. We'll get to that. It's coming. But I wanted to clear those things up first. And I'm sure because of the suppression from YouTube, no one's going to even know that I did that. But I wanted to cover that first. But let's talk about some of the things that are going to affect you, because we're talking about the economy. The economy for the United States isn't just Bidenomics. It's also the consequences of Bidenomics, like we see here. Come on. Nope, that's not it. Really? All right, fine. Oh, I hate when the computer starts acting up. Fine, whatever. So we have China defies sanctions to make Russia the biggest oil supplier in 2023. Remember when you were told in 2022 that Joe Biden was going to bring hell on earth in the form of sanctions against the Russia, against Putin, that would crush their economy if they ever dared to walk into the Ukraine and try and take it over. Do you remember that? You should. He made it very clear. He was talking about it from November of 2021 up until the end of February of 2022. And he did, in fact, enact the massive slew of sanctions against Putin, against the high-ranking members of the Russian government, against the nation of Russia itself. And Russia said, hey, China, do you like Joe Biden? Hey, China, do you like America? And when China said, no, of course not, they said, well, we'll sell you oil. That'll screw over America. That'll screw up Joe Biden. China said, yeah, absolutely. Give us the oil. We need it anyway. Are you worried about green energy? No. China doesn't care about green energy. They laugh in your face. They have never cared about green energy. They don't care about global warming. They're all about just give us the oil. And since Joe Biden is making it difficult for China to get oil, they said, hey, we'll take it from Russia and screw over America and screw over Joe Biden. And they did. But you're not supposed to talk about that. No. That's not a conversation you're supposed to have. You're not supposed to realize that this is affecting the economy. That's affecting energy prices. It's deeply affecting energy prices. Now, sadly, some of the oil that we now see, because Joe Biden and the sanctions that were put in so that Joe Biden can have his proxy war in the Ukraine, well, that drove up energy prices. Because Russia started holding back. They couldn't sell all their oil and gas. Less oil and gas in the world available for nations to buy, more expensive. Supply and demand. It is economics 101. Less of a supply, more demand stays the same, price goes up. It's just that simple. And energy prices have gone up. I know. You keep hearing in the news media, the cost of energy is down from the peak. They leave out that part. From the peak. 3 words, absolutely essential. Yes, energy prices are down from the peak, and they are up well over 50%, about 65%, since Joe Biden got in office. So energy prices are up, not down. They're up. And that's a problem. And you know this because you pay your bill. You pay your bill every month. Joe Biden doesn't. He lives in the White House. He's a multimillionaire. He has a mansion. He doesn't pay attention to that. Because he's working for the government, he doesn't pay federal taxes. A lot of his costs of living, they're paid by the government. Not you. You have to pay all the taxes and you have to pay your bills. You know what's going on. Nancy Pelosi's got staff that are buying her ice cream. She has no idea what the cost is. Chuck Schumer, do you ever see Chuck Schumer out among the public if it isn't for a photo op? No, you do not. He doesn't go and shop in a local store. He's nowhere near where any of his constituents are. They don't know. They don't know the reality that you live through. So when they tell you things are great, well, how would you know? How do they know? They don't know. Everything's great for them. Everything's great for the people in their echo chamber in D.C. They're all living well. They're all making tons of money off of your taxes. But you have an entirely different experience. But I wanted to bring that up so you can understand that Biden, his international policy, has failed in every single way, and it was inevitable. Russia was always going, they already did sell oil to China. That was already happening. But the second that Joe Biden said, oh, well, we're going to make it harder for you to sell oil to Europe, the price of oil and gas went up. And China said, we'll buy. If Europe doesn't want it, we'll take it. So who got hurt in that? Not Russia. They're still selling oil. Not China. They're getting oil and energy that they need. Not Europe. They weren't helped. The cost of oil and gas went up. Germany is in desperate need of more and more energy. And if you want to say, well, green energy, they have windmills and solar. It doesn't work. They already have solar plants. They already have windmills. It doesn't work. And they shut down their nuclear power plants that did work. But, the leftists didn't like that either. Even though that's the safest, cleanest way to produce energy in the world, pound for pound, kilowatt for kilowatt, cleanest, safest way to generate energy is actually nuclear, not solar, not wind, not geothermal, God forbid, not ethanol. But the leftists don't like that because they don't make money. They don't own nuclear power plants. They own windmills. They own solar factories. They don't own nuclear power plants, so they don't make money off of it. So they don't talk about nuclear. That's a forbidden subject. You can't talk about it, which means the cost goes up for you. China doesn't care. Russia doesn't care. Only you. Europe's paying more, so is America. Let me get to the comments here. Graham, and I do see your comments there. Cool, Roy. You got a lot, so give me a second. Just trying to catch up. Graham says, do you think Palestine and Iran will go to war against each other? No, I do not. And I'm getting to that. I was going to be getting to that. I just wanted to cover some of the other things that are happening internationally that are going to affect you. I just want you to understand, when I say that everything we are seeing is inevitable, it was set up in the early first days of the Biden-Harris administration. The second that Joe Biden killed the XL pipeline, he started America on an inflation curve. That was one of the first things that started creating more and more inflation in the United States and around the globe. He put the rest of the world into a recession. And yes, we have been in a recession since August of 2022, in part because the cost of energy went up. The United States stopped being an energy exporter. We became an energy importer. We were importing oil and gas, competing with our allies and the world for the oil and gas that existed. That drove up the cost. And then Russia, we stopped Russia from being able to sell to the world, right or wrong. Doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. That's not the point. The point is, we did that. They're selling to China, and the rest of the world paid even more for the remaining oil and gas. Again, that's where the inflation. It was inevitable that we would see 65% increase in the cost of oil and gas and electricity in America. It was inevitable that Russia would be driven to become aligned with China to fight against America, even though Russia and China hate each other. They hate each other. But they hate America more. And so if they could screw over Joe Biden, they could screw over America. They're doing it, and I just showed you the evidence of it. But no, I don't Did I say Palestine, Graham? No, Pakistan. I meant Pakistan. No, they're not going to fight. But I'll explain that in a moment. But no, Pakistan and Iran will not fight. If I said Palestine, I'm sorry, that was my error. But I'll explain that in 1 second. And I want you to understand that Joe Biden, for all of his bluster, remember, he said he was going to crush Russia. He was going to crush the ability of Russia to continue to commit war around the world. That's what he said. Oops. Sorry. Grabbed the wrong thing there. He said he was going to, that if Russia went into the Ukraine, that he was going to, that these sanctions would crush their economy, that they would end them, and the fact that the United States was going to support the Ukraine with weapons and ammunition, that Europe and NATO would support the Ukraine with weapons and ammunition and train their soldiers, give them tanks and jets. Russia was going to lose. And the result, because we knew that wasn't true. And the result is now NATO, Sweden, Finland, Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Moldova, they're all building up and escalating their military. They are preparing for war. We know that Sweden just last week, I believe it was on January 10th, came out and said that the people of Sweden have to prepare for war, that they are too comfortable, that they are no longer neutral, that they have to build up their army and prepare for war, and it's going to be bloody, and they have to train their people to be ready for a bloody, violent war that will be devastating to their lives, because if they don't make it through the first 6 months, they will lose. That's not me saying it. That was the Swedish defense minister. That's their generals, their military, saying they aren't ready and war is coming. We see the Baltic nations, again, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, have been freaking out, and they have been screaming at the top of their lungs since Putin started hinting that he was going to go into the Ukraine, that this doesn't end with the Ukraine. The Ukraine will lose. I'm sorry. It's not because I believe Russia's a good guy. They're not. It's not because I think Putin's a good guy. He's not. The fact is, Ukraine is too small. They don't have the weapons. They didn't have the army. They don't have the training. They don't have the logistics. They cannot continue to fight an extended period of time. Mind you, they will have skirmishes. There will be a civil war going on for another decade. They're going to have fights in various towns, people against people, for a decade at least. That's going to continue. They've been doing that since 2013, when President Obama threw them under a bus and gave up the Crimea and gave it to Russia as a means of appeasement, giving Russia land to appease them, to delay them from doing what they're doing right now. But no one was, it's not Joe Biden. No one's been afraid of him. And Poland and Estonia, they're saying, you know what, if no one is going to pay attention, if the EU won't pay attention, they're prepping for war by themselves. They know Belarus is preparing to, they changed their rules so that they can use nuclear weapons. I don't know if people notice that. But Belarus, which is a puppet of Putin, they now have authorized the use of nuclear weapons in warfare. They have a border with Poland. Poland heard that and they're freaking out. They're militarizing. They're building up their wall because walls work. And they're building a wall. Sweden and Finland, they're building walls because walls work. Because walls are effective. Because walls impede people just entering your nation and protect that nation from other countries that would harm you. That they're foreigners, whether they're illegal immigrants, refugees, that they could be infiltrated. You could have terrorists or military cells coming into your nation under the title illegal immigrant or migrant, undocumented worker, refugee, whatever slogan, whatever tagline you want to put on them. And they're saying, no, we've got to build a wall post haste because they're in danger. So this is important. This is very important for us to understand. What is the nature of the world? The failure of the Biden administration, of Democrats, of progressives, to have a realistic foreign policy. In fact, any foreign policy beyond do whatever it takes to get through the next election. That's it. That's been their foreign policy. Do whatever makes us look good this second so we can get through the election. That's it. Doesn't matter what the consequence is. Doesn't matter how badly it hurts our allies. They look good just long enough to get through the election. Oh, the Ukraine, we're going to give them all the money. You can't not support the Ukraine. You have to give them money. If you don't, you're a bad guy. You're supporting Russia. You must be part of Putin's party. You are bought and paid by Putin. Unless you hook, line, and sinker go along with Joe Biden. Joe Biden, what's your exit plan? No one's asked this. You never hear this. What's the exit strategy for the United States in the conflict with Ukraine and Russia? How will we get back the hundreds of billions of dollars that we have given to Ukraine? Let's assume, and this is assuming Ukraine wins. Somehow they beat back all of the military of Russia, and Belarus doesn't use nuclear weapons. This is the best case scenario. That they lose outright and they don't use nuclear weapons as retaliation, that Russia gives up on all the land that they have already conquered, and they just give it all up, and Ukraine wins. How do we get our money back? How do we get back all the resources we have dedicated? Is there a plan? Is there a repayment plan? Or do we just forgive that? Or they say that, or Ukraine will just say, well, we'll eventually give you the money back, but until then, we need more humanitarian aid. By the way, give us more money. Because that's what every country in the world is saying. Give us more money. Give us more humanitarian aid. We'll eventually pay it back, maybe sort of, kind of, at some point down the road, if you remember, but give us more money now. That's what they've been saying to the Biden administration, and Joe Biden has been saying, yeah, absolutely. So he can turn around to his supporters and say, I'm such a good, empathetic, giving kind of guy. I am generous with your money. I am generous to the world. But did we give the money for good reasons? Are we going to get anything back for it? What do we get for all of that? That shouldn't be a hard question to ask. It shouldn't be taboo to ask the question, why? What are we getting for all this? Why are we doing it? What is our benefit? Seriously, what's our benefit? Well, Ukraine will be free. Ukraine was a corrupt country before. It'll be a corrupt country afterwards. How does that help us? Where's our benefit? What do we get? No one wants to ask that question. You're not supposed to ask that question. You're supposed to obey, and you're the bad guy if you dare ask that question in 2024, because that is a forbidden topic. That's a problem, folks, because we don't have a foreign policy. And I'm establishing that for you very clearly right now. We've already seen how it's affected energy prices, making this clear for you. It's also inflationary. The billions, hundreds of billions we have given to the Ukraine could have been helping homelessness in America. Literally, with the money that we have given to the Ukraine so far, we could have built houses for all the homeless in America, and we could have fed all the children who are hungry in America, and still have billions, tens of billions left over to address anything else we wanted to. It is that much money We literally have spent that much money. You could have taken, we could have helped the homeless. We could have fed the hungry children. We could have paid off every single, not mortgage, the housing crisis. Could have paid that off. It was $15 billion. We could have paid that off and still had tens of billions of dollars. Everyone facing, that's it, eviction. Everyone who is facing eviction because of the housing crisis from 2020 cost $15 billion. We could have paid that off entirely while feeding every hungry child in America and housing the homeless in America, and still had tens of billions of dollars left over for all the money that we've given to Ukraine. What are we getting back for that? We know what we lost. I just made it very clear. That's what we lost. What are we getting? Is it worth it? Because if Joe Biden wins, we're going to keep doing this. This is the path we are on. This is the progressive path. Whether it's a Biden or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Gavin Newsom, 2028 or 2024, this is the path they want us to go down. What are we getting for all of this? No, don't call me an istinophobe just because you may not like that I'm asking this question or that you don't have an answer for the question, because the Democrats don't have an answer for this. They can't answer this. If you ask them, ask their congressman, ask your any elected official, any Democrat, they don't have an answer for this. They can't tell you because they don't know, because they don't care, because it's not about a solution. It's about re-election and maintaining power. And I dare any elected Democrat to tell me I'm wrong. I'll be happy to have that conversation. I'll go live anywhere in America to have this conversation with any elected official in America and have this debate. More than happy to do it anywhere. Let me look back at some of the comments here. And I apologize, folks. I know I'm behind on the comments, so I apologize. DeSantis, Jason from Binghamton says, DeSantis just ended his presidential bid. Well, you know what? No shock there. The race is already over. The presidential nomination for Republicans is over. Iowa ended that. Point blank. It's done. Nikki Haley, done. And part of the reason why DeSantis is out is because Nikki Haley smacked him down. He can't beat her. Hell, he's almost being beaten by, and in some cases is being beaten by, Vivek Ramaswamy. DeSantis killed himself, his campaign. And DeSantis, Graham says, what if DeSantis joined the Trump administration? He won't. He can't. With the things that he has said about Trump for over a year in an effort to try and supplant and replace Trump by being a better Trump than Trump is, Donald Trump has a huge ego. And while he may like some of the policies, he helped get DeSantis elected in the first place, he doesn't forget his ego is big. And quite honestly, what does Ron DeSantis bring to the Trump administration that he doesn't already have or can't replace otherwise? There's nothing special about Ron DeSantis. Sadly, that's what his campaign has established for 2024, that Ron DeSantis is not special. He doesn't fill anything. Vivek Ramaswamy fills a spot. He fills a gap in the campaign very clearly. He could be a cabinet secretary for commerce. Commerce, I think, is probably the best place for him. Dealing with the economy, dealing with technology or biotech. He could do that. He could be a secretary or a czar and fill that spot. And that's great. Tim Scott could be a fantastic vice president, unless you want to go for the female vote. Then you're going for Carrie Lake. And that would be a wonderful filling that void, bringing back Ben Carson into the campaign because he's been effective and he's a supporter consistently. But what does Ron DeSantis bring? Why would you want? He's doing great as a governor, fantastic, leave him there. But there's nothing that Ron DeSantis does that there isn't someone else better somewhere else. Where would you put him in? I mean, that's just the way I see it. So DeSantis is done. His hope is 2028. He can try and reignite the flame behind him. And I think DeSantis used up all of his favors. He used up all the money. Yes, he will be a presence in 2028. And he's going to say, Trump's gone, so you need someone to replace him. And I'm the closest thing to a Trump now that Trump isn't capable of running again. I don't think that's going to work. We're going to be in a very different type of world in 2028. We're going to be on the verge of 3 regional wars. China is going to be attacking Taiwan, if I'm correct. Inflation is, well, that'll be a problem. So we're going to be in a very different world. I don't think Ron DeSantis is able to capture the flame. If he didn't run in 2024, he could have won in 2028. I think he shot himself in the foot. And Dow says, and he endorsed Donald Trump. Well, of course he did. Who else was he going to endorse? Trump is getting, in the most recent polls, and I'm going to show this a little bit later when we talk about Iowa and New Hampshire, Trump is getting over 70% in polling amongst Republicans for the nomination. He's getting 70%. He's like 73%. Who else are you going to endorse? It's kind of, it's useless. It's useless. Let me go on. Let's see. Dow says it's too little too late for Ron DeSantis. Yes, it is. Grace says, if Florida still wants, that we may have seen Ron DeSantis damage himself so severely he may lose in Florida. I think he's going to have competition in Florida. Absolutely. And I think he may lose because he used up all of his favors, all of his donors, and he doesn't have anything really to show for it. Because again, he didn't stand out. He's not exceptional. He's not something that is irreplaceable. There are many people who could do what he does as well as him, if not better. Foreign policy. Nikki Haley is better than Ron DeSantis at international policy. Economics. Vivek Ramaswamy is better at economics than Ron DeSantis. Just as examples. And this is because Ron DeSantis brought this up. He showed this, displayed this to the nation when he wasn't ready. He wasn't prepared. Dow says he could have pulled a Chris Christie and not endorsed anyone. No, Ron DeSantis really couldn't. If Ron DeSantis wanted any kind of hope of maintaining the governorship of Florida, if he wanted any kind of hope of being able to run in 2028, he had to endorse Trump. He had to be part of the team and say that he was unifying the Republican Party. Once the writing was on the wall, he had to unify behind Trump. He doesn't have a choice. So he couldn't do what Chris Christie did. Chris Christie didn't endorse anyone because Chris Christie was being funded by Democrats. His claim to fame is to have 14%. His funding was coming 14% from Democrats, that he was the anti-Trump candidate. That's all he was there for. He was just raking in money and trying to gain any kind of fame and what's the word I'm looking for? Momentum amongst Republicans to be credible again, to be relevant again. No one cares what Chris Christie is doing. He already blew himself up. He did that in 2016. No one cared. And that's why Chris Christie isn't involved in Republican politics at all. He's not credible. The only thing he's good for is being the voice of Democrats in a Republican setting. So when Democrats want to say orange man bad, they went to Chris Christie. That's why he ran as long as he did. And that's why he can't endorse anyone, because no one wants his endorsement. And no matter who he endorses, they're not going to get the votes, because the diehard anti-Republican Democrats and progressives were the ones who were backing Christie. Those people are never going to vote for any Republican. They weren't going to vote for Christie. So, and we know this. Look at how he's been polling. Look at his performance in Iowa. You can see it. No one was supporting him, and no one was going to support him. So that kind of answers that. So no, DeSantis couldn't go down the same road as Chris Christie, because Chris Christie wasn't and isn't a legitimate candidate. He's not a legitimate Republican voice anymore. He may have been in the past, but since 2016, no. Graham says Ron DeSantis is pretty good at fighting the woke radical left in the culture wars. He is, absolutely. And I will not take that away from him. He does a fantastic job as governor of Florida and introducing alternatives that actually are positive solutions, that are effective solutions to the woke culture, the progressive push, the ever leftward movement of the Democratic Party. He's given us great example after example of how progressive policies fail every single time, and that he has been effective. But he could do that as a governor, but we also have many other governors that are doing the same thing across the country. They just don't get the attention because they didn't run for president. What about in Texas with Abbott? Also very successful at doing the same thing. Chris Christie is not unique. He's just the one who got a lot of attention because he thrust the attention on himself by running before he should have. So you're not wrong, Graham. It's just it's not unique. His assets, his talents aren't if you really do an analysis on it, he doesn't stand out, which is again why he's doing so badly in Iowa, in New Hampshire, why he's dropping out of the race, because he lost this race back in August of 2023. He was done August 2023. I think I said in the live streams in August and in September that he was done. Right after, matter of fact, I think it was right after the first, someone can double check, but after the first primary, Republican primary, which I believe I covered in a live stream, I said, Ron DeSantis is done. Matter of fact, I think I predicted that he would be out in January, and here we are. So, but I could be wrong on that. I might have said he was going to be out before January, but he's definitely out in January. I believe I remember predicting that he would be out in January of this race, 2024, and here we are. So that's kind of interesting. Thank you, Jason and Bing. Thank you for bringing up the breaking news. Thank you, Dal, for following up on that. I'm not surprised. And Nikki Haley, she's going to be following pretty soon after. She wants to go into New Hampshire, where she will do decently well. She's going to beat, and no surprise, she was always going to beat Ron DeSantis anyway. And that's why she wanted to get through New Hampshire, to show that she had some kind of staying power, to do better than she did in Iowa. I think that was her intention at every point, and I didn't expect her to make it to South Carolina. The race is over for the Republicans in terms of the nomination. It's done. Nomination is over, but it always was. It was over in September of 2023. It was done when Donald Trump said he was going to run again. That was it. The race was already done. It's only the left that have said, oh, no, there's a debate, there's a question, potentially he won't. Republicans have been consistent all the way through. At least 60% of Republicans, from the moment Donald Trump said he was going to run again, going forward, and I think about at least 30% of independents have all been supporting Donald Trump all the way through. So, no one is really surprised. Dow says that if he remembered correctly, I predicted that Ron DeSantis was going to drop out before Super Tuesday. That's what I said. Okay. And thank you for confirming. I know, Dow, you've been watching the live stream week after week. And I'm right. Super Tuesday didn't show up and he's out. Shocked and amazed. I'm not. Let's see. Graham says, I think Chris Christie could be a good attorney general. No, he can't. No, he can't. Chris Christie is compromised. And I believe that because he is willing to sell out politically to make money, and that's what he did. That's what the 2024 campaign for Chris Christie showed us. He was willing to sell out to the highest bidder. And Democrats saying be anti-Trump, that was the highest bidder. He's out. So regardless of the fact that Trump has an ego and therefore, just like with Ron DeSantis, there's no space for Chris Christie, and the fact that there is no demand amongst Republicans for Chris Christie, nobody wants him. The Republicans across this nation have no interest in Chris Christie. Never had. That's why he was only polling at about 3-4%. No one cared about him. No one wanted him. So there's no one pushing for him to be Attorney General or to be part of the Trump 2024 administration. And he pissed off Trump on top of that. No, he's not going to get anything. John R. has joined us. Thank you. And he says, DeSantis, yeah, I know. We just heard about it, that DeSantis had dropped out. So I'm not surprised. And we were just talking about that. So that is the breaking news. So let me just type it out here. So, yeah, I'm going to take a bow here because we predicted it. We called it on this program. People can go and look at the live stream and you will see it for yourself. It's not bravado. It's just telling the truth. We called it. We knew it. We knew it was going to happen. So, there is that. Where did I leave off? Hang on. Bear with me, folks. Mary. Hello, Mary. Good to see you with us. Mary says, DeSantis dropping out now will give him a fighting chance in 2028. That's why again, we've been covering it a little bit, Mary, here, because it is breaking news. We've been covering a little bit that Ron DeSantis is hoping to be able to maintain momentum for 2028. When Trump is out, he's going to say, well, I'm the most Trump-like person in the Republican Party, so I should be the guy in 2028. I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that being Trump-light isn't effective. There are too many other people who are more essential and have shown themselves. DeSantis is too weak on international policy. He's not strong enough on economics. I don't know that he's not as motivational in terms of his speaking. And so that's going to be a problem. I mean, Vivek can give in fact, Vivek Ramaswamy, early into this second place competition that was the Republican nominations of 2024, in the debates, Vivek Ramaswamy was at many points beating Ron DeSantis. So that's our 2028 lineup. Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis. We got a good look at each and every one of them. And in that lineup, Vivek is a very strong contender. And for a good part of it, about half of the entire race, he was beating Nikki Haley and he was beating Ron DeSantis. And Vivek is going to, his base with younger voters seems to be growing, not decreasing. So I don't see, I have to tell you, Mary, I don't think that Ron DeSantis is in as good a position as he hoped to be. If he had dropped out of the race in November, I'd say, yeah, he'd probably have a better standing. He'd have made more friends. He'd have been able to save more money and been able to position himself better. But he spent the money. He stayed in the race. And he's leaving now as a loser. Losing in Iowa, losing even worse in New Hampshire. If polls are correct, he's losing even worse in New Hampshire. And national polling, Vivek has beaten him and shown that he can beat DeSantis several times for several months, for an extended period of time. He did not do himself any favors. He stayed in the race too long. I agree with Grace that I think DeSantis actually gave damage to his ability to even remain as Florida governor. So, but I understand but his actions today are all about trying to jump on the Trump train and salvage as much as he possibly can so that he has something left over for 2028. The other problem and this is a little more inside baseball for people, you may not realize this, another problem for DeSantis is his communications, which is a problem for me in terms of his leadership. He delegates horribly. His campaign was horribly run. He had to restart his campaign 3 times. 3 separate times he restarted and repackaged the messaging of who is Ron DeSantis and why he is running. And each time that new launch of his campaign failed. He changed his personnel, I think for 3 months in a row, he changed his team, his lead team in running for the election 3 times. And within 3 months, he was plagued with mismanagement. And that's important, to me at least, because I follow politics, because I follow how they run their campaigns is not necessarily a mirror, but a window into how they would run an administration. Now, mind you, in Florida, DeSantis is doing well, but he has an entire team and he has the support of the Republican National Committee. He has support in Congress. They're all supporting him all the way through in his battles. He has media that is willing to support him as the governor of Florida. But in terms of a national campaign, not a state, but a national campaign, which is very different, his messaging and his communication with his staff and with his team, the messaging of the ideology of his goals broke down. That means to me that he has between now and 2028 to fix that, to become better on a national level, to be able to communicate and to lead and to administrate. And if he can't do that, he should not be the candidate. And if nothing else, we got to learn that's a weakness of his. He is bad at delegating. He is bad at expanding his message, which means he would have been horrendous at international policy. And back in May, I think it was May 31st of 2023, we actually ranked all of the candidates in terms of their international policy. And if I remember correctly, DeSantis wound up with a D. He was ranked D. He's not good. So this is a chance for him to grow. But we will see. Grace says that Vivek sounded the most like Trump, in her opinion, and just wish he had some experience, not that Trump did when he started. Well, Trump is a billionaire who's been involved in politics since the 1980s. So Trump has been dabbling with politics and among politicians and been involved in politics from the sidelines, somewhat more actively than just on the sidelines, for decades. So he's had an experience, and he's also been doing international business with governments around the world for decades. So Trump had some level of experience, not governmental experience, but he did have some experience and he did have some influence, and that counts. And then, of course, there's his own persona and his policies, and being very much committed to his ideology, his view of what is America and how America can do well. And he stuck to that very well. Vivek needs more experience internationally. He hasn't had the decades of life to gain the experience that Trump had. He hasn't had the decades of experience in terms of business and international business that Trump has had. These are the things that Vivek can learn, and this is why I say he wants to be, and the smartest thing is to make him a cabinet member, Secretary of Commerce, so that he can gain that international as well as national experience to develop that and to become a better candidate for the future. That's what I would like to see. I could be wrong. Well, let me see here. Cool Roy says, people naturally forgive politics. He's a cruiser, Ted Cruz, who voted for Trump twice. Love the man. Yeah, and in 2016, as is public knowledge, I mean, it's in video, I was all for Ted Cruz. I thought Ted Cruz was the better candidate, which, looking at everything in 2016, I would have stood by, because he was a politician. We had a track record. We could judge him, whereas, Trump was a wild card. But now in 2020, looking at Trump, we have a track record. We know how successful he can be. We know how he does diplomacy and how he looks at the nation domestically and what his policies try to do. So, very big difference there. So I understand what you're saying, Coolroy. The key is the more we learn about the candidates, the more we learn about their capabilities and see their experience as it plays out, then we get a better impression of them. Coolroy goes on to say, people will forgive everyone, but not so much with Pence or Nikki Haley or with Chris Christie. I wouldn't put Nikki Haley in the same grouping as Mike Pence and Chris Christie. I really wouldn't. Again, Chris Christie sold out. He is done. He was done back in 2016. He has buried himself forever. He will never be involved in Republican or U.S. politics again. He is done. Roasted himself. Mike Pence, same thing. Because of the way that he turned on Trump, and therefore Trump turned on Trump supporters, on half of America, the way that he flip-flopped because of the politics, because he wanted to try and go for the presidency, because he thought he was going to be getting more support from Democrats than he deserved. Well, he failed, and he also has destroyed his future in politics. I don't think you'll ever see Mike Pence involved in national politics again. He's going to be there with Chris Christie. Chris Christie sold out for money and for the Democrats, and Mike Pence basically sold out for the potential of a political position. Neither of those are going to come true. So I don't see Nikki Haley in that same vein. I could be wrong. We have Mike with us. Mike, I know, which Mike is this? We have a couple of people who go by Mike. Several of them are progressive, Democrat, left-leaning. And so I'm not sure which one this is that is speaking with us right now. But Mike says, I'm not the biggest Biden supporter, so I'm hoping he doesn't end up being the nominee. Of course, I'll vote for him, but I want somebody younger. Oh my God, Mike, that is, I wasn't going to get into the whole thing about Iowa and New Hampshire. Let me get into that. Because, Mike, and I apologize, I don't mean to beat up on you. I don't. And I'm not trying to beat up on you, but the position of what you said, I think, needs to be highlighted. That, of course, you will vote for Joe Biden, even though you don't support Joe Biden, that you don't want Joe Biden. 58 to somewhere between 58 and 63% of Democrats don't want Biden, but they're all going to vote for him anyway. That is the worst answer possible. That is a horrendous reason. I have no choice. I have no option, so I'm going to vote for him. That's not good. If you don't think he's good enough to support, why in the hell would you go and vote for him in an election? If he's not the best choice, what the hell? And we can see that the Democrats they killed your voice, Mike. And again, this is true for all the Democrats out there, the liberals, the progressives out there. The Democratic Party killed your voice. They were the ones who said no one could go and get in the primaries against Joe Biden. They were the ones who told the Senate Democrats, United States Senate Democrats, that if they voiced support for anyone except Joe Biden, that they would lose all of their re-election funding, as stated by Move On in June of 2023, as we covered, June 27th of 2023 to be exact. It was the Democrats that said that there would be no primaries, there would be no debates, and it's just Joe Biden all the way. And now, let me show you this, guys. And I'm going to come back I see your comment there, Mike. I'm going to come back to it. But now, I want you to understand how bad this is. And people are going to vote for him anyway. But I really have to bring this up. I was talking about this on the Liberty First Foundation on Friday, in the Friday Roundtable, okay? And give me a second here, folks. So on Friday, we were talking about this. The Democrats, the Democratic Party, the DNC, has just nullified all of the voters in New Hampshire. They just said they don't count. They're meaningless. That no matter who they choose in their primary, it means nothing. They could pick Joe Biden. They could have a landslide for Joe Biden. It will mean nothing. They do not count. Their votes, their voices are meaningless. Mind you, they took their money. They took the money from the Democrats, the rank and file Democrats of New Hampshire. They took every dollar they had and asked for more. And they're still asking for more, even as they say the New Hampshire primary will not count. That every single Democrat is not human. And I said this before. I've said this in videos before. I want to be clear. When the DNC, Democratic National Committee, says that people in New Hampshire do not count, that no matter what their primary decision is, it is invalid, that is voter nullification. And it also means that they do not see, the DNC does not see Democrats in New Hampshire as human beings. I want to be clear on that. Quote me on this, folks. You can clip this and send it to every Democrat in New Hampshire. The DNC does not see them as human beings. Human beings, American citizens, have a right to vote for whomever they want. They have a right to have that vote count. Human beings have choice and they have agency. That is a fact. That is what our Constitution has said. That is what the concept is. Rights given by God. The right to speak, to complain, to vote, to express your ideas and your ideology. And when a political organization says that your ideas, your voice, your goals, your desires are meaningless, that they are inconsequential, that they do not count, they do not exist, they are null and void, then they are saying you as a human being and an American citizen do not exist. You are subhuman. No one else in the news media will go through this and tell you this. They do not want you to think about it. They do not want anyone in New Hampshire to suddenly realize that the DNC has now said American citizens are not human, do not count, because the DNC doesn't like what they chose. They don't like what New Hampshire has done. That's got to be shocking to you guys. I don't understand how you can be a Democrat. I don't know how you can be a Democrat in New Hampshire after seeing that the DNC has told you you're invalid. Your existence is useless, which is what they've done here. Now, let me go back to the comment. And I know you heard my puppy in the background. He's early. He's been, okay. So let me try and work this out for you guys. But let me go back to your comment here real quick, Mike. I believe this is Democrat Mike, but let's go forward. Democrat Mike. There is no other viable candidate running for Democrats, you say. And I would say, and Mike said Dean Phillips. No, he's not a choice. He really isn't. Never was. And RFK is not a Democrat. Well, that's not true, Mike. Democrat Mike, RFK is a Democrat. And the only reason why he went independent is because Democrats kicked him out. Because just like they're doing to New Hampshire, they said, if you do not obey, you're out the party. You don't count. You're not a human being. You're not recognized as an American citizen or a human being. That's what the Democratic Party has said about New Hampshire, but they said the same thing about RFK when RFK said, I'm a Democrat. I have a different policy. I have actual policies that he wants to promote. He's not brain damaged, and he wants to speak to Democrats who 58 to 63% of them don't want Biden. He said, I want to be that alternative. Put me on the stage. Let's have the debate. Let the Democrat rank and file voters, let our representatives make the choice. Give them the option. And the DNC said, no. We no longer recognize you as a Democrat. We no longer recognize you as a human being. You made a choice they don't like. Therefore, you are eliminated. You're not an option. That's the problem for RFK. That's the problem that Democrats have right now. The DNC is so authoritarian, they are telling you, you can't pick anyone except what they have approved. The entire concept of a Democratic primary is a joke, not because there aren't Democrats that are willing to run and may or may not be choices, may not be capable, but because the DNC said, no, they don't exist. They're just useless. Do you understand what I'm saying? You don't have to agree with me. Do you understand why I'm saying this? Do you understand how the evidence, as it's being reported by PBS, do you understand how that is coming across? That this is the message that the Democratic National Committee, that's the message they're sending to America, to Democrats. And I understand the news media is doing their damnedest to hide that from you, to not discuss that, to not consider the consequence of that, to not say, oh my God, they've just invalidated a huge swath of America. That they have demonized and dehumanized their own party. And if they're willing to do it to New Hampshire, you mean to tell me they're not going to do it to you as an individual? You mean they're not going to do it to any other state? If they're willing to do it to a state that's been diehard blue, bluer than blue, progressive all the way, supporting Joe Biden when everyone else really has questions, and they're going to go and throw those guys under a bus, what the hell are they going to do to people in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in the purple states out there? What are they going to do to people in the red states out there? Democrat or Republican or independent, libertarian, doesn't matter. What are they going to do to all you guys? how lowly do they value everyone else just because they don't agree? You got to ask that question. You really should be asking that question. Folks, I know you heard my puppy in the background there, and I'm going to take him out because he's been not feeling well, and then I'm going to come back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a speech that I was doing a few years ago, and then I'll come back. But let me see. And by the way, Democrat Mike, Gavin Newsom, not an option. Again, for the same reason that RFK isn't an option. I'm not telling you that, yes, I think Gavin Newsom's a horrible Democrat. I think he's a horrible governor. I think he has horrible policies. But that's not the point. The DNC said he doesn't have the right. He's an American citizen, and he doesn't have the right because the DNC, a political organization, said you can't do it. You can't share your voice. You can't give people an option. You must obey. And Gavin is. That's why Gavin's waiting for 2028. It's kind of crazy. Let me see here. Give me a second. I'm trying to catch up to everybody. So again, you guys can see my point, but let me do this. I know I hate that I have to do this in the middle of the show, but as you can hear, my puppy is not feeling well, so I need to take care of him. I'm going to play here.
And I have him here. I'm so happy. The man, the myth, the legend himself from upstate New York.
Okay. So what you're going to see on the screen is, I believe this is my interview. I was being interviewed and speaking with the students of Rutgers University. We were doing this in, I believe, 2020, so we had to do this by Zoom. And this is my speech and discussion with the college students at Rutgers University, the New Brunswick branch. I'm going to play that for a little while as I take care of my puppy, and then I will come back. I'm going to pick up the conversation with you, Democrat Mike, about Kamala, about rights and freedoms. And please, I'm looking forward to the comments for everyone, whether you agree with me or not about what the DNC has just said about Democrats and Americans, because they are nullifying the people of New Hampshire. I really want to hear about that, but let me go and take care of my puppy real quick.
And I have him here. I'm so happy. The man, the myth, the legend himself from upstate New York, Binghamton, originally from here, but now from there, with his own podcast.
All right, guys. So we're up and we are live, and it is streaming now. I apologize to everyone watching the video on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, as whatever the internet gods will allow. Because technology was giving us difficulties. We've got it resolved, and I think for the patience of the students over at Rutgers University, Gabriel, this is your show.
In New York State.
Start on up.
And Puerto Rican.
Oh my God.
I'm like checking off all kinds of boxes they can't.
Thank you.
That's correct.
So
that's not what's supposed to happen.
today we'll have Michael Vasquez, an expert on gun control and red flag laws, speak about how red flag laws are immoral and how their implementation has led to a multitude of negative consequences for communities across America.
Well, you're originally from the Bronx, right?
Thank you for that.
Just like I am.
And I want
Heavy
to
Democrat
welcome
vote.
everybody there over at Rutgers. It's great to be back with you guys. I was hoping that I would be able, if it weren't for COVID, I'd be there on campus again. Last time I was on campus was about 1990. When I left the school, I got there in 1986. And it's a beautiful campus. You know, the dorms right on the Raritan, the three towers, I was in the middle one on the 6th floor. And also,
I was on Campbell Hall, the one like farthest from like the center of New Brunswick.
Yep. And so
love those river dorms.
Oh, they are the best. And we had all kinds of trouble that I beg of you, don't do anything we did because we were just really bad. A different world though. But it is good to be back with Rutgers University. So let me mention that I like to do whenever I speak, and I do speak on these kind of subjects quite a bit, been doing this for about 15 years now, and I do like interactivity. I'm going to go through the little bit of the speech first, and then we're going to open it up to all your questions. I hope you have a lot of questions. I know it's an issue that a lot of people have not heard a lot about, and there are some very specific reasons for that.
You do lean libertarian.
But to let me get started, let me first state that this is not meant to be a definitive legal finding or analysis. What this is meant to start a discussion and spark understanding in what is proposed, intended, and the consequences of red flag laws. Starting from the most recent point, let's start and understand the issue at hand. Red flag laws are also known as ERPOs, or also known as Extreme Risk Protection Orders. Any of those names all mean the same thing. And they are part of a larger issue that's now being called the, quote, common sense gun control policy. But what does that really mean? In March 27, 2021, New York Times opinion article columnist Frank Bruni noted in the affirmation, quote, gun control is probably the most instantly and widely recognized shorthand for the debate over such laws, and journalism depends on verbal economy. I don't think gun control is the main thing standing in the way of additional measures to protect Americans from gun violence and to diminish the number and near instant availability of guns in a country crazily saturated with them. How we write and talk about any issue that engenders passionate disagreement is, end quote. Now, we can all agree that words are powerful. And by the way, all of this speech is going to be provided to you at mvos.com. It's going to be available at 9:30 p.m. this evening, including all links to sources that I am mentioning. So you'll have a chance to review it later if you wish. But what's even more powerful than words is the meaning of the words, or to be more exact, the commonly understood meanings of words and phrases, which may not be the same thing. So what does the Second Amendment mean? Some would say it refers to the right to hunt, or for the state-approved civilian military ownership, which essentially means the National Guard. Most would say that it allows for American citizens to own non-military firearms, and in some cases military-class firearms, to provide for self-defense from ne'er-do-wells and potentially a government gone rogue. That general meaning is supported by the Supreme Court decision of District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008, and now disputed by the Ninth Circuit Court decision in Young versus Hawaii. And it is not absolute but very wide-reaching. Coupled with the National Firearms Act of 1934, a civilian can own a machine gun, an actual weapon of the military, an actual assault weapon, but only with a very special and limited federal license. There are potentially 131,952 licensees as of January 2021 per ATF records, with 726,951 machine guns registered as of April 2020. 39,979 of those are found in New Jersey, 3 times the number in New York State. In fact, New Jersey ranks 5th in the nation for machine gun ownership, outdone only by Georgia, Virginia, Texas, and Florida in that ascending order. Now, that may sound like a lot of machine guns. If we were to ascribe to the theory that assault weapons are a danger to American lives, then obviously this huge number of actual assault weapons would be a leading, if not the leading category of homicides in this nation. In fact, there have been 4 known cases of assault weapons used in crimes since 1934. The most recent was in Madison County, Mississippi in 2019, and in that case, 0 people died.
I think that is the worst thing you can do.
To look at the data even more closely, according to the FBI's Crime in the USA 2019 report, which is the most recent full report we have at this moment, 364 people were killed by all types of rifles. That's in comparison to 1,476 knives and cutting weapons. Yes, knives are 4 times as deadly as the so-called assault weapons often cited by Joe Biden and other gun control advocates.
50 years of your life.
Now, back to meanings. So far we have defined the most popular understanding of the Second Amendment and its relation to law as well as the real world implications. Brief, but established. What else must we be defined to have a coherent discussion?
How's that possible?
What is an assault weapon?
While
While it's a real term denoting weapons used by organized military forces, its common usage is more in line with what Bruni was hoping for, a mischaracterization and a deception to promote a political agenda. Assault rifle is a term created in the 1980s for the purpose of elevating semi-automatic rifles to a more terror-inspiring level. Coined aptly in the land of make-believe, California, the assault rifle conjures images of Rambo or Schwarzenegger in an action film with an endless supply of ammunition to boot. It conflates the concept of firearms with wanton violence for the roughly 50% of Americans that have little or no experience with actual firearms. This delusionary imagery is compounded by flawed articles by news media. A report from the Daily News in 2016 by Gersh Kuntzman is one example. He said, quote, "It felt like a bazooka to me and sounded like a cannon. The explosions, loud like a bomb, gave me a temporary form of PTSD."
It's happening.
He was talking about an AR-15.
It's happening right now.
Or perhaps you heard Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee describe her experience in a bungled mix of sensationalism and pure political hype, whose only connection to reality stopped at the name of the firearm in question. She said, I quote, "I held an AR-15 in my hand. I wish I hadn't. It is as heavy as 10 boxes you might be moving, and the bullet that is utilized is a 50 caliber bullet." End quote. This fiction relies entirely on the credibility of the institutions providing this political hype, because it takes about 10 seconds on YouTube to debunk the claims, as there are 10-year-old girls definitively proving these things to be untrue. We addressed this in several video commentaries in the past, but the outright lie persists because news media and elected officials are expected to be authorities and above dishonesty, which is factually inaccurate, especially when they have a political goal in mind. Now, all of this brings us to what is a red flag, ERPO, or Extreme Risk Protection Order law. It is a series of laws based on the 1999 Connecticut creation, and all forms of ERPO laws in the category have these elements in common. A person has a concern about an individual that owns a firearm. That concern is elevated to a warrant to seize property by the government. The victim is not notified and until the moment of seizure itself. Due process does not exist until after the punishment has been enacted. No crime is required or generally assumed. The consequences, such as a loss of reputation, income, lifestyle, and children, are never considered nor have any recourse. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Why is it okay for me to say that?
Now, red flag laws currently exist in some form in 19 states and Washington, D.C. And all of them contain these exact elements. The bill is in the Senate under S-292 by Senator Marco Rubio, and it contains these elements. Red flag laws violate the Second, the Fourth, the Fifth, the 10th, and the 14th Amendments, as well as the due process system in our judicial system. And we've covered this extensively in August 2018 in a report we submitted to the members of the New York State Assembly and to the New York State Legislature, Senate, and prior to the passage of the red flag legislation in New York State. That 8,000-word report is based on 6 months of interviews, research, FOIA requests, and over 150 qualified sources, including the only 2 studies that have been done on red flag laws to this date. The result is that in New Jersey there have been more than 200 ERPO, or Extreme Risk Protection Order actions in the first 5 months alone. New York has had at least 624 red flag actions in its first year as of November 2020. At least one of those red flag actions caused the death by suicide of one of the victims here in New York. And New York, like every state thus far, does not keep or report on how many families and children have been impacted by this law. Not one governmental organization in any state or any elected official has responded to my official request to begin counting since we've made our repeated requests in 2018, 3 years ago. But specifically, we're talking about New Jersey today. So what does the Extreme Risk Protective Order Act of 2018 actually say? As submitted by New Jersey Assemblyman John McKinnon and co-sponsored by Assemblyman Benson in 2018, the original bill was Bill number 1217, and it states, any person may submit an application to the court, and that was changed in the final law. The judge may examine under oath any person seeking the order and any witnesses the person produces. The judge shall consider a recent threat, act of violence by the person, the history of threatened use of physical force, evidence of a recent or ongoing abuse of alcohol by the person, evidence of recent acquisition of other deadly weapons. These are all critical things that I'm going to go over with you in a second to let you understand how broad this really is. In lieu of the required written affidavit making this charge about the red flag action, the judge may take an oral statement under oath. That too was changed in the final law slightly. A gun violence restraining order shall include stating that the person is entitled to submit one written request for a hearing. And if the person violates subsection B of this law, the person is committing a crime in the 4th degree and includes being prohibited to be able to control a firearm. These are all really important things. I want you to understand the consequences of what this is all talking about. Because it may sound like gobbledygook. It may not have an impact. I want to explain what we're talking about. Now, there's much more, and there are some minor changes to the final law, as I mentioned, but let's consider what has been stated. Absolutely anyone, including a troll on social media that despises your personal preferences on a piece of entertainment that they love, a movie that they saw, a song that they heard, can file an ERPO in many states. New Jersey did just that to any family member and anyone who's been in your household. That means anyone who's currently or in the past been a member of your household and law enforcement in general. In New York State, it would include teachers, even a temporary badminton coach at a school. The internet is still part of the admissible evidence and or witnesses, which means your tweets, your texts, your Facebook posts, your Instagram posts, your pictures all count against you.
You're upset.
Now, that troll can provide witnesses, and they can all make their cases orally. There is no required check on the background of the accuser nor any of the witnesses that they provide. And this will all be done without ever telling you that this is happening or allow you to defend yourself. So they have an unlimited source of individuals that they can pull from. You're never going to know about it. And these all may be people who have a problem with you or your opinion, say like on Star Wars, whether you think Rey is great or not, which a lot of people had an argument about.
According to New York law,
now, this argument you had with the troll, and perhaps you even had this problem in person, maybe they know you, maybe they're part of a club or a group that you're in, is part of the evidence that's being used against you. Especially if you happen to suggest that you might, if you happen to do what, like LL Cool J, back in the day, he had a song referencing Mama Said Knock You Out. And if you happen to do that, well, you just made a problem for yourself. If you happen to buy a hammer, nails, a cooking knife, golf clubs, a baseball bat, any of these items, or pretty much anything, a brick, in the last 6 months, it could be a little bit longer, believe it or not, that's also used against you because that's proof that you just had violent intent. Because every one of those items, a chair, a golf club, a cooking knife, a hammer, they're all violent weapons that have been used to commit murder. Therefore, they are dangerous weapons as defined by New Jersey. If after the argument with the troll, you go out with your friends, and let's say it's a Friday, you've just finished up with your schoolwork or you're done with your job, and you have 4 beers, just 4 beers, guess what? You're now an alcoholic. Worse, if you had 1 shot during that time and you had that, that's even worse for you. And it's massively worse if you've ever had mixed drinks in those 4 hours instead of beers. This is solidifying that you are an alcoholic, which again, according to New Jersey and in general, these are things that are being used against you to verify that you are dangerous to yourself and others. And it's insanely worse if they can show that you've gone out on a Friday and had 4 beers or other drinks ever before. So the first time you do it, that's all it means. And by the way, your Instagram is being used against you. Your Facebook and Twitter are being used against you to prove that you are, by definition, an alcoholic and are a repeat offender. Now, since you've proven how dangerous you are, and there is no one in this process who is defending you. No one is standing there saying, well, no, that's just a regular Friday. No, they were just going out to play golf. No, they just had an argument about a movie. No one is there to protect you. No one is there to say that you are a good person. The judge is going to decide and err in the side of caution. And they're going to do that because they don't want to get blamed for the next mass shooting that may possibly happen, because they have a political career to consider. So you're going to get notified normally somewhere between 5 and 8 a.m. in the morning by a SWAT team that's going to be banging on your door. Now, I hope that you're not waking up with a hangover, nor should you jump up and think that someone is trying to break into your house. Because God forbid if you did that, that has led to someone's death already in a red flag action. And that's when you're going to be told, at that moment is when you're going to be told that they're coming in, they're going to search your house, they're going to take your property, and anyone else's firearm that may be in that household, and you don't get to do anything about it. What they will do is tell you that, oh, and here's the form you need to go and set up a time to go into court to say that you're actually innocent of what we just did to you. And that's assuming that you can afford a lawyer and the time off from work to actually go in and get this done. Now, mind you, even if you do go in to court, you get a date set up, remember that in the meantime, all of the local media is now reporting exactly what just happened. That you've been, and that means you're going to be barred from schools, you're going to be barred from anywhere that children may be or could possibly be going to. You could be fired from your job, or your business, if you own it, could suffer because it's getting the negative publicity. And we've seen this actually happen real world, this actually does happen.
Expressly for the fact
Plus,
that they can then
the
take
troll,
your
the
data.
person who started this whole process, is now online and has a legion of followers who are absolutely guaranteed they suddenly believe that you are an evil terrorist, and you must be because the police brought a SWAT team to bust down your door and take your property.
Even $10,000.
Sounds pretty bad. It ain't over. It gets worse. Because I'm going to add two things to this not quite fictional example here. Because it's not really fictional. It's happened to people.
Even if you win.
If you have kids, they must be removed from that home. I want to be very clear on this. This is an absolute direct consequence of every red flag law in every single state, and if it would be passed nationally, would happen nationally as well. And it's very simple. If in every state, children must be taken out of any household that presents a real danger to those children. If they are at risk, they have to be taken out of that household. You just had the government deny you your constitutional rights, and they did that under the guise of you being a danger to yourself and or others. That means those kids are in danger. They must be taken by the state, so you're going to be fighting to get your kids back, as well as your property. As the media tells everyone that you just lost your kids and your property because you are a dangerous person. And let's keep going because it gets a little bit worse. Now imagine that you may be a woman. And let's say that you're attacked by a man who on average is about 6 inches taller, weighs maybe 40 pounds more than you do. And you're going to fight that person off. Good for you. Now let's say that attacker, for some reason, maybe it's someone part of that online legion of people who saw that you are some kind of dangerous person. They see you at school, they see you at work, or going to the movies, or going to some public place, and they think, oh my God, you're a dangerous terrorist. You're here to kill everyone. They're going to come up and confront you. And since they know that you've been armed in the past, that's why the police came and took your firearms, they happen to be armed, legally or otherwise. And they're confronting you. Now imagine in that situation that, okay, you get into a scuffle and you, luckily, good for you, you overpower this individual. And you take control of that firearm to save your life, to keep this person under control. Guess what? You just broke the law again. Remember I mentioned Section B of the law? You now control a firearm. That is a direct violation of the law, and you are now going to be arrested for defending yourself.
Percent chance of being shot and killed.
Sounds insane. This all sounds crazy. But if you don't believe me, please go and look at the law. As I said at mvos.com, I have the link to the law itself in its current form. You can read it for yourself and see it's all right there.
Don't believe me?
This is consequences. And there are more. I'm just limiting it for time.
In the United States.
And these are consequences that are existing in every single red flag law in every state and in the nation as proposed. There is zero consequences, by the way, for anyone who misunderstands what's going on, that they made a mistake. Because if someone says, oh, well, they aren't a danger, if it is proven after the fact, well, that was a mistake. You don't get to do anything about it. You don't get to sue. You don't get to have any damages. It just, okay, eventually we'll give you back your firearms. You can go into the courts and try and get your kids back. Hope the social media wasn't too bad. Hope you didn't lose your job. Hope your neighbors didn't label you as some kind of terrorist freak. I hope you're going to be all right. Go on about your life. Thank you very much for participating in this.
I'm back.
Of course, Khan had to go right when we're right in the middle of it. Literally, I just walked back in the door. And I know, lost a few people there. But got to hear the interesting conversation between me and the Rutgers University College Republicans. Just a little bit of what I do when I go and I speak at colleges and some of the conversations that I have with students out there, which is important, I think, for many of you who are younger, who may see this or see clips of this. You're not alone. Many of the adults out there, you're not alone. There are people in intelligentsia, in the academia, in every walk of life. You're not alone. There are many of us who are conservative, Republican, libertarian, who don't agree with the progressive push towards socialism, towards communism, towards the destruction of our foundation of our nation. And I am always happy. For those of you who are watching, you're younger, you want me to go to college, I will go to any college, community, full college, Ivy League, I don't care. I will go to any college. I will go to any location in the United States, pay my airfare, pay for my food and lodging, and I will go anywhere in the United States. I will go anywhere in the world and speak about any of the issues that I have covered over the last 18 years. More than happy. Gun control, First Amendment, free speech, internet, censorship. I'll cover it all. The border, international politics. More than happy. More than happy to talk about any of those things. So let's deal with that. Now, let me just type this in here. I'm back. And let me let everyone on Rumble know that I'm back. So people, if you were watching or if you have friends and family that were watching the program, please let them know I'm back. Had to go for a little bit. Again, my puppy, Khan, he's 13 years old. And he looks like a puppy. Most people think that he's still a little puppy because he's 19 pounds. Actually, a little bit overweight. He should be 16. So a lot of people think that he's still a puppy. He's actually 13 years old. He's an older dog. And some of his life is changing, obviously. He's very old. So our patterns that we used to have when I do the show is changing up a little bit. And so we're still trying to adjust to these new changes as his life is changing. Just one of those things that you have to go through sometimes. Let me go back to the thing that was very interesting, and I want to go back to this. There's another speaker in the background. There was more than one voice during the video. There shouldn't have been. Okay, so I want to go back to what was being said by Democrat Mike. And let me find this for you. Where is it? Where did he say this? Give me a second. There's a lot of comments here, I see. So bear with me one second. I just want to go back to what we were talking about before I had to take the break. And it was Democrat Mike, and he made a statement, and I want to bring it up for everybody. Here he goes. Here it goes. So before the break, we had, okay, so there was too many sounds. So before the break, and I apologize that I had to step away again, but Democrat Mike, and I'm glad that you're still here with us. Thank you for that. Democrat Mike said, and this is the thing that kicked me off, is I'm not the biggest fan of the biggest Biden supporter, so I'm hoping he doesn't end up being the nominee. Of course, I'll vote for him, but I want somebody younger. And so that brought us to the revelation, and I think it's very important, that Joe Biden isn't on the ballot in New Hampshire. He's been removed by the Democratic Party. Now, part of my focus in talking about that, and this is being reported by PBS, this is a fact, is again, we were talking about things that were inevitable. It was inevitable that Joe Biden, the Democratic Party, would nullify voters in New Hampshire, that Democrats would be told by other Democrats, by their elites, their leadership in the Democratic National Committee, that they don't matter. Their votes don't count. They aren't human beings. And again, I say human beings because human beings have agency. They can make choices in their life. In America, that's actualized by you going out and voting. Whether you write in a vote, and you can write in Daffy Duck, you can write in Dr. Doom, you can write in RFK, you can write in anyone you want. That's your right by birth. And here it is, a political organization, the Democratic National Committee is saying, no, you're a robot. You don't get that choice. You don't have that freedom. You can only choose what they have approved for you. That's what's being said here with New Hampshire. That it's only the approved. And again, as we have detailed for years now, Joe Biden has he's at 36% approval nationally. Democrats, somewhere between 58 and 63% don't want him to run. But we still hear from those very same people, but I'll vote for him anyway. Why would you do that? You obviously don't believe he's the best choice. And I know, and Democrat Mike, you were mentioning, there's, who am I going to vote for? RFK? Yeah, he was a Democrat until they did the same thing to him and said he doesn't count, that he, as an American citizen, doesn't have a right. When I say this is inevitable, look at what Democrats have done. They have said, okay, women don't have a voice. They told Marianne Williamson she can't run. You didn't hear that from Republicans. Not a single Republican said Marianne Williamson can't run. Not a single Libertarian said Marianne Williamson can't run. The Democrats said Marianne Williamson can't run. They told women, you don't count. You don't get to have that. The people who are most involved in screaming about representation won't even allow representation in the primary for 2024. They had to fortify this. They had to solidify it around Joe Biden. You didn't get to have a choice because you might not have chosen Joe Biden. You might have gone for RFK Jr. You might have gone for Marianne Williamson. You might have gone for Dean Phillips or Gavin Newsom. I don't know. You might have picked AOC or Maxine Waters for all I can tell. But you don't count. That's something that a human being would do. That's something that an American citizen would do. And when you're in the Democratic Party, apparently you don't get any of those things. I don't understand. Why would you do that? Tens of millions of dollars have been raised by New Hampshire. People have run around in the cold of winter in New Hampshire to try and support their party, and their party said, screw you, you don't count. I don't understand why would you vote for this candidate? Someone that you're not a big supporter of. Why would you do it? Because they said, well, this is who's approved. This is it. Because you're going straight down the line, just going Democrat, Democrat, Democrat. But they're not the best candidate. They're not the best choice. How can America do better if we're picking from what's approved and not the best? Where's the meritocracy in that? Now, to be fair, Democrat Mike is responding, and I do want to get his response. Democrat Mike first says, but you understand that there are currently 0 other viable Democrats running against Biden. No, that's not true. There is RFK Jr., there is Gavin Newsom, there is Marianne Williamson. There are other choices. And by the way, considering that it seems that Joe Biden is mentally deficient, that he has problems, significant and severe problems. The fact that he is not respected internationally. Iran doesn't respect him. Look what they're doing in the Middle East. Russia doesn't respect him. China doesn't respect him. North Korea doesn't respect him. France, under President Macron, literally said that they were going to divest themselves, to distance themselves from the United States under the Biden administration to become more aligned with China. Africa is not respecting him. There are lots of options. Do I think any of them are good? No. I don't think Gavin Newsom or RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson, AOC, I think they're all horrible choices. But then again, I have a more conservative Republican outlook. And some people will say, well, then I'll go to the Libertarian, or I'll go with an independent, or you'll write in somebody. But the point is, you have freedom to choose. You have a voice. And the party is supposed to respond to you, Mike. If they're not giving you good candidates, that's one of the reasons why we write in votes to say, your choices suck. I want someone better. I want someone different. Write in whomever you think is the best choice, Mike. That's my thing. Democrat Mike, write in. Your voice matters. And if 5% of Democrats wrote in, I don't know, Stephen A. Smith, then the party would say, hey, wait a minute, something is wrong here. We screwed up. 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever the number is, of our diehard rank and file are saying, we got it wrong. We have to do better. We have to put up a better choice. Now, you may say Donald Trump isn't the best choice. Well, Republicans have had several options, and we chose him. He's the best option we wanted, not the best one that was given to us. Because God help us, the establishment Republicans have been trying to pick anyone but Trump. The news media has been trying to pick anyone but Trump. Democrats have been trying to pick anyone but Trump. And we had anti-Trump, so-called moderate rhino Republicans. We had that choice. We heard their voices and said, they're not good enough. Does that mean there's someone better in the wings? Maybe. But we went through our selection because our party, love it or hate it, the GOP said, these are the people who are up here. Choose. And we chose. We said, okay, we have the right to speak up. Why is the Democratic Party not doing that? Because they don't believe in the things they are selling you. They're selling you on, look at the propaganda push. Look at all of the entertainment, whether it's the Super Bowl or movies like the Marvels, the TV shows like She-Hulk. Look at Echo, diversity, inclusion, representation, except where it actually matters, except when it comes to electing people. We see Democrats run on a regular basis. I have brown skin, vote for me. I'm a woman, vote for me. I'm a woman with brown skin, vote for me. That's not a qualification. And you only get the choice that they provide for you. So when you say, but there's no one who's currently viable, I don't think that's a real answer. Because you're not restricted to what the party gave you. You're restricted to who do you think is the best person. Democrat Mike goes on to say, because I would rather Biden than Trump. Okay, that's not what you said. That's not what you said. And that makes a big difference. Because what you first said and what you went into, you didn't say, oh, but I want anyone but Trump, which is also a bad statement. That doesn't mean that's good. Anyone but Trump is a horrible way to vote for someone. Because look at what we got. Joe Biden came in because it was anyone but Trump. And what did he do? We have a recession. We have high inflation. Our national debt is skyrocketing. We have international instability. We have Iran actively targeting United States citizens and assets around the world, targeting our allies because Joe Biden is weak. 30,000 Americans have been abandoned because Joe Biden just left them. That's in Afghanistan, Ukraine, Sudan, and now in Gaza, including the hostages that are being held because Joe Biden just let it go because it wasn't politically expedient for him to deal with that. This is the problem we're dealing with. Anyone but Trump doesn't mean you got a good choice. You still have to pick the best person. And I don't see how you can say Joe Biden is it. It would be, I really can't see that. But Democrat Mike goes on to say, I'm a supporter of Biden. That's not what you said. Well, actually, to be fair, you said you're not the biggest supporter of Biden. That's fine. And by the way, again, Democrat Mike, I am not picking on you. I am not picking on you or your choice. Let's not make this about the individual. I'm not going after you. I'm not going after an individual and your choice. You have the right to pick anyone you want. I'm talking about what the selection process, the loss of American voices, the loss of freedom. I'm talking about the supremacy of political parties. Yes, particularly the Democratic Party, but the Republican Party to an extent as well. I'm talking about the fact that they are asserting themselves above the American people. That's really the biggest point. And yes, Democrats are the biggest example of that. And this is the most clear example of that. But it's not restricted just to Democrats. It's lesser so, but still existent in the GOP as well. But that's my point. So I'm not picking on you, Mike. You can want to vote for Joe Biden, fantastic. If you think he's the best choice, fantastic. If you're voting for Joe Biden because he's not Trump, that's not an answer. That's an excuse. Because I don't care if you like Trump. I don't care if you like Biden. I care about the policies. I care about who's effective. I care about who's efficient. In 2016, I was after Ted Cruz because he was effective and efficient. He had a track record, and that track record indicated that he could be good. He had weak points, but overall, he seemed the best. Now I have a track record. I can confidently say Trump is the best choice to deal with the international problems we have right now, because we've seen him deal with these international problems previously. The reason why we have the problem with what's happening in the Middle East right now is because on day one, Joe Biden, and besides the economic reasons, on day one, he doubled the number of Americans in Syria. Day one. Matter of fact, I have that. I had that. I was preparing for that. I was going to show that earlier. Where is it? I believe. Let me show everyone what I'm talking about here, because I think it's kind of important. Here it is. So, there it is. This is day one of the Biden administration. He doubled the number of American troops to be in Syria dealing with the Syrian civil war. This is an extension of what the Obama administration was doing. So that instantly took America and put a roadblock between us and Iran and Russia. It was a confrontation with Russia and Iran, who support the Syrian leadership right now, and put us in opposition of them and endangered American lives, and said that America, in terms of Middle East politics, in terms of dealing with Iran and Russia, was in direct opposition. No conversation. There was no conversation. There was no debate. There was no prelude to that. Literally, Joe Biden got in, stroke of a pen, same first day, and said, here we are, America's going to assert itself into Middle East politics. Something we were winding down from under the Trump administration with the Abraham Accords. It's the reason that Trump had gotten 2 Nobel Peace Prize nominations for increasing the peace in the Middle East and downsizing the presence of the United States in the Middle East as it was becoming more stable. And Joe Biden, with the stroke of a pen, reversed that entire process. I want you to think about it. The Houthis, who are Iran-backed terrorists, same day that Joe Biden went and said, okay, we're going to have conflict with Iran and Russia, he tried to appease Iran a little bit because he took the Houthi terrorists, they are rebels, terrorists in Yemen, and they were on the global terrorist list. Joe Biden removed them in 2021. It's another one of his executive orders. He took them off the terrorist watch list. This was after, and understand the background, to understand the inevitability that we are having the problem today with the Houthi rebels is directly because of what Joe Biden did. And this is a problem for having him reelected. Let's understand this. Under the Obama administration, Obama was illegally drone strikes against American citizens in Yemen. He was attacking the Yemen Houthi rebels. They're terrorists. I feel no pity for them. I don't. I do have a problem with attacking American citizens that have not been convicted of the death penalty. I have a problem with that. But I have no problem. We were attacking the terrorists. Okay. Those rebels didn't have the resources under the Obama-Biden administration to fight back. They were on the terrorist watch list. They couldn't gather the resources. Joe Biden walks in day one. He takes them off the terrorist watch list, which then instantly allows them to gather up international resources. That opened up bank accounts for them. That opened up avenues to humanitarian aid for them. That gave them the money that allowed them to reorganize and to rearm. And that eventually leads to where we are today. It is inevitable. They still wanted to get back at America for when Obama was bombing them with drones. Rightly or wrongly isn't the question. They weren't removed. Therefore, they wanted, the Yemen Houthis wanted to strike back against America, which is something that Iran, who supports them, wanted to do anyway. And the moment that Joe Biden took them off the terrorist watch list, that gave them the money to be able to fight us today. We would not, in all likelihood, we would not be seeing the same Red Sea attacks against American vessels and American military and the United Kingdom military and Japan and India. You wouldn't be seeing that happen, or at the very least to the same degree, if it weren't for what Joe Biden did. This is inevitable. There was no way around this. He made those decisions. He increased the global instability that led to each of the things we are seeing. He was the one who gave away the keys to the prisons to the Taliban that released ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and that caused many of the civil wars that are happening right now in Africa, including the Sudan, where because of that Sudan civil war, 15,000 Americans were abandoned by the Biden-Harris administration. And you're telling me that anyone but Trump? Is that really the trade-off you want to make? This isn't personal. I'm saying this to all Democrats. I'm saying this to all Americans. I don't care if you don't like Trump, but if your reason is about feelings, look at what you have traded off for. 30,000 Americans abandoned, global instability, terrorists that have been funded and now are attacking. And you're going to see the same thing with Hamas. As we give them more and more humanitarian aid, they build more and more rockets and weapons and supply their troops. It is inevitable that we will continue to see them attacking us. Anyone but Trump isn't a viable answer. It's not realistic. Your feeling, if someone has a feeling that they don't feel like Trump is a good person, that isn't an answer. That's not what the job is about. That's not what we are trying to pick as president, or at least that shouldn't be who we're picking for president. It's not about how they look. It's not about the color of their skin. It's not about whether they're a nice person or whether I'd have a beer with them. I could care less about any of that. I care about, did you understand that when you took the Houthi rebels off of the global terrorist watch list, you gave them access to money so that they could commit more acts of terror? Did you understand that when you gave the keys to the prison to the Taliban, ISIS resurged and they came back and they went right into Africa killing people. Did you understand the consequences? And Mike, you say there's no other Republican in the race. Again, that's because of Democrats. Anya Cox is with us. Hello, Anya. Thank you for joining us. Anya says, Anya, I'm not sure if you're speaking to me or if you're speaking to Democrat Mike when you say he doesn't care about all this, Mike. I do care about why he picks Biden. I'm also highlighting the problems. Because Mike said just previously that he never said that Biden is the best person. He's not the best nominee. In fact, I quote, I never said Biden, is the best person that I would want Biden to be the nominee. I know it's going to be Biden versus Trump. In my opinion, I like Biden better. Hence why I said I'm voting for Biden. That's fantastic. And I haven't told you don't vote for Biden per se. I'm saying understand the consequences, understand what we are getting for that trade-off. And unlike you, Democrat Mike, you're making your case clear, but understand that's not what we're hearing from the media. That's not what we're hearing from social media. That's not what we're hearing from elected Democrats. They're saying anyone but Trump. Their problem is a man, not his policies. They're not attacking Trump on his policies. They're not attacking him on his track record, his effectiveness, his ability, what he did. They're attacking him on they don't like him. They're attacking him on they want power. In supporting Biden, I want people to understand that they are literally making America more authoritarian. They are disenfranchising American citizens. You didn't get the jab. You're a bad guy. You believe in making America great. You're a bad guy. You vote for Orange Man bad. You're a bad guy. Orange Man bad is a bad person, not because of his policies, but because he exists. Do you understand the language they're doing? They're shoving in propaganda into our sports, into our movies, our TV shows. This isn't what people want. Every single place they're doing this is failing. There's a reason why there's a saying that says, go woke, get broke. They're trying to destroy and change America. And I think that's important that we have to have that conversation. And it's not enough to say, well, he's better. Let me ask this question. Why is Biden better? What has he done that is better? That he deserves your vote. And I'm asking that honestly because I want to know. I want to understand because I cannot conceive of how someone gets that except if they say anyone but Trump. If they say it's about feelings and not facts. That's the only way I get there. And I have to emphasize that's not a valid reason. If the reason is feelings, if the reason is just obey what the elites have said, that's not a reason, and that's destroying America. If you think there's a better policy, fantastic. But from what we can see objectively, empirically, that's not the case. And so, empirically, we are losing our freedom. Does that make sense? Again, Mike, Democrat Mike, you don't have to agree with me. You can say, Mike, I get that, but those aren't my reasons. Fantastic. You can say, Mike, I understand why you would say that, and I have a different opinion. That's fine. I'm not telling you can't. We're not that channel. You know that. You've been on the channel before. I'm not going to demonize you for making the choice. I'm trying to highlight that the cost at this moment for the reasoning that Democrats have fortified 2024, the reason why they nullified the state of New Hampshire, their own Democratic Party, they nullified them, is because of authoritarianism. The Democratic Party has become far more authoritarian. Progressives even more than that. And that is a danger to America going forward. Anya says, she's talking about Democrat Mike only cares about the narrative, a.k.a. Orange Man Bad. Well, I'm taking Democrat Mike at his word. I really am. That he says, no, it's not about feelings. Fantastic. But I'm pulling out policy. The things that we are facing now are inevitable because of what has been done, what the policies have brought us, and the fact that we're not able to talk about it. Do I think that if the American people were not being suppressed, that our conversations were not being demonized, that we weren't being ostracized for daring to question what our leadership are doing, we would be in a better country. Joe Biden, anyone, would have to react. Instead of telling people, you didn't get the jab, you're evil, we would have had someone say, here's the best reason, here's the science, here's the proof. Because, by the way, we didn't have science when he said that. We had a feeling. It felt like they thought that this untested experimental medication would achieve a goal that they were expressly told, as we now know, by the pharmaceutical companies wouldn't do what they promised. It's just like when you heard Obama say 20 times that he did not have the power to institute DACA, that no president had the right to unilaterally allow illegal aliens to be in America. Didn't have the power. That's not their power. That it was President Obama himself who said he didn't have the power to do a lot of the things he did, and did it anyway. We're slipping into authoritarianism. Anya says, Biden administration condemned over attacks on free press. Speaking of authoritarian, that's an odd highlight. Well, he attacked, remember when, it's not just Joe Biden, but we've seen this from Democrats for a while. It was, again, going back to Obama. Remember Obama saying that Fox News isn't news? Not because they failed to report something properly, he didn't like what they were saying. Mind you, since that time when President Obama said Fox News isn't news, well, let's see. How many times we've seen NBC have how many reporters that they had to fire for fabricating stories? How many times did we see the New York Times have to fire people for plagiarizing? CNN, MSNBC. We've seen the left-leaning news media, the ones that are supposed to be credible. How many times have we seen that their people aren't telling the truth? How about the fact that the New York Times made the choice for 2.5 years to tell the American people that Hunter Biden's laptop wasn't real, when every single source, including the FBI, said, no, it's actually real. It's verified real. That it's actually his laptop and the files on there are credible, are correct. And it took 2.5 years for the New York Times to turn around and say, oops, we got it wrong. Anyway, going on. Think about that. These are acts of authoritarianism. This is where America is slipping. And I'm sure we could point out similar things to a lesser degree to the Republican Party. The establishment is the problem. We are allowing them to gain too much power, to tell us that we can't do things that we absolutely, inherently, unequivocally have the right to do. And it is coming to a head in the 2024 election in a way we haven't seen previously, because we know that they fortified the 2020 election. Newsweek ran the story, told us that there was a cabal of social media, tech giants, news media, and politicians all working together to put people on a path that only led to one thing: Joe Biden, anti-Trump. That led to more power for them and their political preferences. Was it the best choice? Who cared? They didn't care about the best choice. They cared about their choice. And now we are seeing that happen again in 2024. We are seeing YouTube. Look in your feed, everyone, anyone, look in your feed in YouTube. You will see local news stations that you never have looked at, that you have never even known existed, and they're in your news feed. For the content creators, go into the recommended list from YouTube and you will see content that you have never recommended, that you have never discussed, that you have never promoted, and they are trying to shove it down your throat. They're trying to get the approved messages, and they are spending millions, and they are changing their entire company to push the approved message and suppress every other voice. That's not American. That's not something that you do outside of an authoritarian government. Does that make sense to people? Do you see why I'm so upset about this? It's the Democrats that are saying, oh, you can't have Trump on the ballot in Colorado and Maine. Republicans didn't say that. Republicans didn't say, oh, we don't like this guy, so you can't vote for him. But Democrats did. Democrats believe in accusation equals guilt. That's a problem. That's a massive problem that is not being discussed because that's what's happening in Colorado. That's what's happening in Maine. Accusation equals guilt. In fact, again, no crime was committed, but the punishment is being enacted as if there was a crime. That's got to really catch your attention, folks. No crime committed, but the punishment is there. This is like the red flag laws that you were promised would lower suicide, and that would remove or end or decrease the number of mass shootings and school shootings. It didn't happen. 19 states and Washington, D.C. have red flag laws. And guess what? They have not changed the number of mass shootings, number of school shootings. They have not reduced the number of suicides. In fact, there's only one study that says maybe it might have an impact. They're not sure. That's it. All of the rest of the research, all of the rest of the data says, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't prevent suicides. It doesn't prevent mass shootings. It doesn't prevent school shootings. And yet they're telling you, no, well, we have to do this. And remember, what's the key component? What is the universal thing that is consistent in every state about red flag laws? Accusation equals guilt. No crime is committed. Your rights are removed. You lose your rights. Who's pushing that? That's not a Republican issue. That's a Democratic issue. The Democrats are pushing that. That's authoritarian. Same thing, Me Too movement. How many times have we seen individuals that claimed Me Too and then were lying, that have been brought up in court? It has been proven. And again, I'm not saying that Me Too doesn't exist. I'm not saying that women don't get discriminated against at some point in some time throughout the nation or the nation's history. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that men who are abusive should be allowed to get away with it. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm also saying that we've also seen a lot of people have used Me Too to be able to accuse someone, to punish them falsely. And there is no repercussion for that, just like with the red flag laws. If you accuse someone of being a danger to themselves or the community and it's false, there is no repercussion. There is no backlash against that. That's what happens in an authoritarian country. The policies are becoming more and more authoritarian. They are becoming more about maintaining power. Joe Biden's policies over and over again are about maintaining his power. His actions in terms of oil and gas have been about maintaining power for Democrats to appease the progressives that believe in climate change. He's more after the stop oil movement of Europe than he is about helping Americans. Because quite honestly, Americans lead the world in making the world more clean. I have no problem with having a clean planet. I don't think anyone does. Climate change, I don't think is real. Not the way they've described it. Not man-made climate change. But you want a clean planet? Fantastic. I'm all for it. And by the way, the United States is doing that. That's why we lead the world. That's why all of Europe and the United Kingdom combined don't equal the amount of greenhouse gas reduction that the United States does by itself. The problem for climate change, for all the people who are screaming about climate change and the world's going to end, start talking to China. Talk to China. Talk to India. Talk to African nations. They're the problems, not the United States. We're the solution. But that's not politically advantageous. And see, there's where my problem is. It's that, oh, we're being demonized for saying, well, we're the solution. We're doing it right. We're fixing this. And they're saying, well, no, you're not doing enough. What the hell is enough? It's never enough. And as they continue to say, it's not enough, you have to do more. You have to obey more. Stop asking questions. Stop looking at the facts, the details, and just obey. We slip into authoritarianism. This is inevitable, the outcome. The moment that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on to 60 Minutes and she said, it's not about the truth. It's not about the empirical, the semantic, the mathematical truth. It's about feelings. When she said that, America should have gasped collectively. We should have wanted her to be removed from office, unelected. Because that's wrong. When George Santos was removed from Congress, while Bob Menendez remains in Congress, as we have seen people like Charlie Rangel remain in Congress, they committed actual crimes. In terms of getting bribes, we've seen members of Congress get bribes. We've seen Bob Menendez has bars of gold that were found that were part of his bribery accusations. He's in office. George Santos didn't break any laws. Did not break any laws. Has not been convicted of any crime. They removed him. Does that make George Santos a good guy? No, not at all. Doesn't make him a good person at all. Doesn't mean that I want to see him reelected. No, not at all. I think he took advantage of the public. And as such, he should not be reelected. But he committed no crime. Why is he being punished? Because the news media, who should be at blame, it's their job. The news media is supposed to look at his background. They're supposed to inform the public, do interviews with him, check his credibility, and tell the public when he lies. Tell the truth. Show people what's going on. They didn't care. The Democratic Party didn't care. The Republican Party didn't care. The system failed. And rather than anyone in the process taking blame for that, saying they failed the public, they instead said, oh, we'll cover it up and we'll just remove George Santos so no one will have the proof that we failed to do our jobs. I'm sorry, that's authoritarian. Anya says, the Young Turks keep popping up for her and her feed in YouTube, and I keep disliking the videos, yet it keeps doing it. And I understand you're not a fan of the unhinged buffaloes. I understand completely. But can everyone see, and Democrat Mike, can you understand what my actual underlying problem is? It's not anyone's individual vote. Yes, I think Trump is the best candidate of the batch that we have. I also believe in people writing in whomever you want. I'm more than happy, and I have covered RFK. He is a valid option. The Libertarian Party, Jill Stein, is a valid option for people. Hell, Cornel West is running. I think he's absolutely out of his mind and a terrible choice. He's an option for people. I have recommended on this channel many times for people to write in whatever they want to write in because it's a valid option. I want voices. I want people involved. But being involved means we have to stand up to this approved message, fortification of our elections. We have to make our elected officials accountable for what they are doing. I think it's critical, and it's not happening. It's not about Joe Biden. Joe Biden failed. He will go down in history as a miserable, one of the worst presidents we have ever had. That is a fact. That is empirical. It is factual. It is documented. We can show how his policies have led to America becoming worse off, the world becoming more unstable. We can do that. And I've done that for years on this channel. Because it's about making America better and less authoritarian. Because that's the road we're going down right now. That's the road the establishment is leading us, left and right. And the news media and social media are cheering along the way because they think they will profit off of that move towards authoritarianism. China is absolutely supporting that as they're making their preparations to engage in war, regional war, in Southeast Asia, against Taiwan, against the Philippines. North Korea has said they want to re-engage in war. Matter of fact, I had that, I wanted to show that. And again, folks, the things I say, I don't make them up. I have the evidence. Bear with me. Where's North Korea? Where's North Korea? North Korea. There it is. There it is. Okay. I have the evidence for everyone. And we present it every week on this channel. Every week on this channel, we present the facts. We show you the evidence. This is, by the way, so you can see it for yourself, this is an article. Can you see it? North Korea conducts underwater nuclear weapons systems test. Okay? But also, in this article, coming from the BBC, because you don't see this in the United States. They don't want to talk about North Korea. They don't want to talk about the missile tests in the United States. But what you can see is Kim Jong-un has just reversed. He's stopped under the Trump administration, he was trying to unify with South Korea. We initiated those talks under the Trump administration. We were looking to end the war with North Korea and have Korea become one nation again. And the reunification talks have ended, as we can see now, under the Biden administration. As North Korea is now ramping up for war. They have fired more missiles, more rockets, more ICBMs than at any other time in history as they prepare for war. And Joe Biden won't even talk about it. He doesn't even talk about it. The American news media doesn't talk about it. This is important. This will affect your life. This is a prelude to a regional war that we believe on this channel will start somewhere around 2028. And we need to be prepared. Just like in Sweden, when their generals and their defense has said, the people of Sweden need to prepare for war. We are not ready. We need to be prepared. Well, the same thing applies to the United States, especially with this touchy-feely military, this experiment, this social experiment that's going on with America and our military. We're not ready. But North Korea is. China is. Iran damn sure is. And we know for a fact Russia is absolutely all in. We need to be more prepared. This is a problem. Graham is still with us, and Graham says, maybe the historical perspective on Joe Biden is that he has been the best illegitimate president of the modern era. Well, that still hasn't been resolved. You make a good point there, Graham. That's still not resolved. That's still a lingering issue. And as Americans are less confident in our elections, as we become just another nation, this is what's happening. We are literally, the foundation of America is being knocked down, and we're being brought down to the level of every other nation. And I know people who are watching this internationally, my friends over in the United Kingdom, in Sweden, in Switzerland, Italy, India, Canada, all these other countries that watch the program, I know you're saying, oh my God, Mike, you're insulting us. Let's be honest. America's not at the same level as these other countries. We have more freedom. We have more freedom, quality of life, and military strength at the same time than anyone else. No one else in the world has that. And we are losing all of that. And we're becoming more like Angola or Uganda or like Chile. We're losing our preeminence. One of the most important things that Americans had, that the rest of the world used to laugh at, was that Americans could honestly look the rest of the world in the face and say, our elections are honest and open. You may not like our choices. Sometimes we don't like our choices, but they are fair elections, honest and open, and we trust them. We can believe in our election system. George Santos didn't break that. Taking Trump off the ballot, telling that an entire state of voters that they don't count, that is bringing us down to the level of third world nations. That is breaking America. That is destroying. You want to talk about, oh, well, we can help less and less Americans are voting in elections. This is a trend that has been happening since the 1960s. As progressivism has become more popular, there is also the same trend that there is less and less engagement in elections in America. That's midterms, that's local, that's presidential. That's a fact. The graphs will all verify that. So as we're seeing less and less involvement, more and more apathy, we're also seeing more and more authoritarianism. The less people trust the election, the less people vote. That's why there's so much voter apathy. That's why people don't show up to vote. And as they do that, that allows more authoritarianism to creep into our government, to creep into our lives. It is a corruption in America that is destroying America. That's what I believe. Now, you may say, Mike, I don't agree. Okay, why? Don't tell me you don't like what I said. I don't care. Because this isn't about whether you like it or not. It's, is this factual? I'm giving you concrete evidence, long-term, internationally verified facts, and I'm drawing my conclusions from there. You may say, Mike, those conclusions lead somewhere else. Fine, I want to hear that. If you tell me I don't like where they lead, I don't care. I don't like where they lead either. That doesn't make them invalid. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Graham says, the Democrat Party is blaming Trump for the, quote, end of democracy, end quote, because they know a new system, neo-feudalism, is now growing towards political dominance. I don't think it's neo-feudalism. I think it's just socialism. Because progressivism is socialism, which is just a precursor for communism. You can't just get, communism is global. Socialism is the precursor. And progressivism is pushing people towards socialism every step of the way. It's not neo-feudalism. Although, as a consequence of becoming more and more progressive, which means more and more socialist, what do we see? In all of these socialist countries, we have a class of people who are neo-nobles, which I have often referred to members of Congress as neo-nobles. Individuals that have entire lifetimes as a political leader, influencer, whatever the word you want to use for it. that they're involved in politics. That's their career. That's their lives. That's not what America is built for. That's not what they're supposed to do. You're not supposed to be a politician forever. That's not supposed to be your lifetime career. But that's what they have become. And somehow, along the way, we have been convinced by the academics and the media that once you enter this class of neo-noble, once you get elected into Congress, into an elected office, you are somehow imbued by God itself with greater knowledge and understanding than any other human being, greater than you ever had. By osmosis of the votes, you suddenly become smarter, your IQ goes up. And as someone who has interviewed politicians, candidates of every political party, everyone from the Communist Party all the way to the Democratic Party, the Republicans, the Conservatives, Libertarians, who's run for elected office, who knows members of Congress right now, Democrats and Republicans, who knows candidates all across the country, I can tell you with absolute assurance, every single one of these elected officials is just as dumb today as the day they got elected. They're not smarter. They didn't get higher IQ. They don't understand things you don't understand. They don't understand either. They're not that smart. That is a fact. It's not a question. It is empirical. And if you ever get the chance, and I know most people don't get the opportunity, as I have been lucky enough to do because I do this for you as a member of the press, they don't get to speak with these politicians as often. You don't get to have their personal phone numbers. You don't get to talk to them before and after events like I am sometimes able to do with some of them. So you may not realize, but I do. They are just as dumb as the guy walking down the street. They have no greater knowledge, no greater insight, no greater wisdom than anyone you know. They just have a different position. And they get a big megaphone from the mainstream media saying, hey, this one I like, that one we don't like. And it has nothing to do with, do they know what they're talking about? Graham goes on to say, the oligarchs who reign over religions will certainly use socialist principles to extract the most productivity out of workers. The chairs make them smarter. They connect with the brains that they're sitting on. I like that. Yeah, they're sitting on, you sit in a chair in Congress, so therefore you're smart. And they act like that. They truly do. They truly do. And it's insulting and it's upsetting. Insulting and upsetting. But let me see here. Dow says, the Federalist Papers argued that the central national government, federalized, would draw in the best group of people to administer the affairs of state from among the learned of the population. It can, but look at what happens when it goes off the rails. What happens when the news media, which is supposed to be the watchdog for the public, what happens when they pick a side? When they stop being neutral, when they stop being honest. Think about it. Rachel Maddow, who is supposedly a journalist, yes, she's a political commentator, but she's a journalist. She's a member of the press. And as breaking news was occurring this week, Donald Trump was speaking to the nation. He's talking about why he should be the next president of the United States. This is international news. Rachel Maddow and her channel, was it NBC, decided that they would censor that speech, that they removed that speech. Fox News did the same thing to Vivek. But Donald Trump, this is a person who was the most powerful man in the world when he was president previously, and he is looking to become president again. And he is potentially going to become that president. He has a good, better than average outlook or opportunity to become president again. And Rachel Maddow decided, you don't get to hear him. Now, I have no problem if she decided to listen to his speech and say she disagreed with everything he said. And she wanted to make her argument about why he is wrong or how what he's talking about has a conclusion that is bad. That's fine. That's political commentary. That's what I do. That's what she's supposedly doing. But that's giving you access. That's giving you the opportunity to hear his voice and hear her counter. That's a debate. That's a discussion. That's treating you like a human being. That's respecting you as having that you are an individual and you have agency and that you have the right, God-given right, to make a choice. But Rachel Maddow, who is very much a leftist, very much a Democrat, very much progressive, said, you don't get that choice. She said, no, you don't get to hear what he has to say. You don't get to see his victory. She's not going to cover that because she made the decision for you. And as part of a major international news agency, they said, yeah, that's okay. Perfectly fine. I'm sorry, this is breaking news that will affect internationally lives in the billions. Whether Trump is or is not president affects billions across the world. It is important to cover when he wins and he is saying, here's my legislative agenda. Here's what I plan to do. This is why I won and why you should vote for me. That is important in America and the world. And Rachel Maddow said, you don't get to hear that because humans get to hear that. Humans get to make up their mind. Humans get to discuss that. But if you're watching Rachel Maddow, you're not a human. You're no more human than Democrats in New Hampshire, as the DNC has said, as the DNC has proven. You're not human. You don't get a choice. You get to obey. Here's the approved message of the day. That's it. Does that make you think of 1984, the book by George Orwell? Does that make you see visions of every authoritarian, real or imagined, in the history of mankind? Because it should. And that should trouble you. Especially as they are continuing to do what I have termed the fortification of the 2024 election. Because we can see it is inevitable where this road leads. We have seen it already, and we are continuing to see it. It leads to war. 3 regional wars across the world. We already have Russia, Ukraine, which we are seeing. The Baltic nations, Poland, they are telling us it's going to expand. Finland, Sweden are telling us it's going to expand. It's going to get worse. We have the Middle East, and we are being told, we're watching it day by day. Yemen, Jordan, Gaza, Egypt, Syria, Iraq. It's getting worse. It's spreading into Africa. It is getting worse. Before our eyes, now they're attacking Pakistan. By the way, I promised Graham that I was going to talk about Pakistan. I'm going to get to that in 1 second, Graham. It's getting worse before our eyes, and now we have China. Folks, there is a path here, and you're being led down this path, but you're not being told what's at the end of that path. Where does it lead to? And if we continue, based on what we have been shown so far, it leads to war. 3 regional wars simultaneously across the world, and all of them are against the United States. Their goal is to destroy or diminish the United States, to turn the United States into a third world pauper nation that is run by dictators. And I don't mean Donald Trump when I say that. He's not the one in charge, nor would it be Joe Biden. We're talking about unelected and elected officials behind the scenes that are pulling all the strings. Again, you may think I am wrong. That's okay. Tell me why. Don't tell me that you feel good or bad about it, because I don't care. Tell me if you think I'm wrong, tell me why. So let me see. Dow said, Dow goes on to say, let's see where, a term and then he could be, wait a minute, a term and then could be reelected to an office. Wait a minute. Sorry, I have to catch up to some of the comments here, so I apologize, I fell behind. So Dow said the anti-federalists rebutted by pointing out this elitist thinking and called for rotating duty along with term limits so that representatives and senators would serve a term and return to the people, a term in elected office, and then could be reelected to an office to finish out their final limits and then retire from their civic duties. So essentially, the initial thought was, you're not going to be a professional politician. You do it for a short period of time and you're out. And I think the one thing that I really wish the leaders had put in place were term limits, especially we eventually created it for the presidency, which initially was just tradition and then was codified into law. And when we made it a law that the president could only serve 2 terms, 10 years if something happened, but you could only be president for 2 terms, at the same time, we should have made the same rule for Congress. We should have taken the opportunity right then and there and said, no, you cannot be in Congress for 50 years. You can't spend half a century wrecking the country. We really should have. Grace says, will Trump be able to put an end to any of the wars that he's claimed? Okay, so that's a very good question. And Grace, let me answer that for you. And yes, folks, I do see the comments here. And I see your comment as well, Mary. I'll get to that in 1 second. Graham, I didn't forget about your question about Pakistan. So, Grace, will Trump be able to stop the war with Russia and Ukraine? Will Trump be able to stop Iran? Will he be able to stop China and or North Korea? Yes and no. Not all of them. Will Trump be able to stop the war with Ukraine? No. Putin is not going to stop now that he started. He's already committed. He's put far too many resources into this. And he desperately needs the food, the fertilizer, and the uranium that he has captured from the Ukraine so far. He needs the access to the Black Sea that leads into the Mediterranean. He needs that, and he's not going to let that go. So he doesn't just end the war, but he would negotiate, I believe, with a strong leader that is doing more than just sanctions, more than ineffective sanctions that have allowed him to just go over to China and say, okay, Europe's not buying, I'll just sell to China. We need someone to strongly and understanding the consequences, effectively twist his arm and say, look, you've already got the wheat, you've got the fertilizer, you've got the uranium, you've got access to the Mediterranean. Stop there. Just take it and stop. That's the best answer we can do for the Ukraine. That's the best answer we can do for Europe at this moment. It gives a chance for Poland, for Finland, for Sweden, for Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania to build up their resources to be able to better protect themselves. It gives NATO a chance to put together a plan to either economically or any other way to fight against this wave coming from Russia. We need a definitive plan with clear objectives. We need goals to say, yes, We hit that goal. We hit this target. We need to know what we are aiming for, because right now, the only answer is keep funding Ukraine. For how long? Until when? And what happens if we lose? What happens if we win? What happens? We have no idea. There is no answer for any of these questions. Whether Ukraine wins or loses, we have no answers about what happens next. We need a plan. So part of it, and so it's not appeasement per se. It is because the war's already been fought. The land has already been taken. It's been conquered. It's the end of a war. It's a truce. It's the end. They won. What they won, they keep. Like in every war that has land exchange, like any war, the loser loses land and resources. The winner takes them. The war's over. Let it go. And now and with what's left over, what's remaining, let's figure out how we move forward next. We need to put together a plan to rebuild what's left of the Ukraine, a plan that will protect the Baltic states, that will protect Poland, that will protect Finland and Sweden, a plan that will protect Europe. We need a plan. Stop the fighting, put together a plan. Without that, the fighting only expands. So can Trump do that? Well, he is a deal maker. He has been effective. Putin respects Trump. He doesn't like Trump. Trump doesn't particularly like Putin. Acknowledging that someone's not an idiot isn't saying that you like them or that you're on their side. It's just reality. Most people do not become world leaders because they're stupid. You don't start wars and engage in wars and fight wars successfully by being an idiot. Yes, Hamas, they're idiots. They knew they were going to lose. They knew what was going to happen to Gaza when they went in and slaughtered innocents and civilians from around the world. They knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew they were going to get slaughtered and destroyed. They didn't care. They're not smart people. But then again, they're not in charge of a nation. They're barely in charge of a city. So our expectations are pretty low there. So Trump could negotiate a truce, which would involve Russia keeping what it has. Now the bad part is that means that Russia gets to consolidate its resources, to rebuild its army, to integrate all of what it's captured into what is Russia. That's a problem. But at least that's a problem we can answer in the future when the global tensions are ratcheted down. That we wouldn't be continuing 3 simultaneous global events. That would take care of at least one region, lower the temperature somewhat in the world, and give some degree of stability. Looking at China, Trump has intimidated China in the past. China doesn't like Trump. Trump doesn't like China. No one in America should like China. They are not good people. Communism is a horrendous thing that I would never wish on anyone. So, no, he doesn't like them. They don't like him. But again, they respect and fear him, and that is more important. Having that fear is critical. They fear that he can unify Japan, especially as Japan now has its own military, that he could unify South Korea, that doesn't like Japan, but is the 4th largest weapons manufacturer in the world. That he could, because the United States has a relationship with Japan, with Korea, with the Philippines, and they would be unified under a strong American leader, that would stop China. Because right now, Japan and South Korea and the Philippines are trying to put together a South Asia coalition, but they don't like each other. They don't trust each other, and the coalition isn't working. They need a strong, unifying, respected, and feared outside source. They need the United States, because the United Kingdom doesn't have the respect or fear. Australia doesn't have the respect or fear. the United States does. And if the United States were to reaffirm that we will stand by the U.S.-Japan treaty, that we will stand by South Korea and our treaties with them, that we are willing to go in and help fortify the Philippines and protect them, that we are going to continue to build the nuclear submarines with Australia and help them to defend themselves against China, and that we would build back up our Navy that is currently shrinking, that we were to expand it, yes, I could see Trump stopping China from actually taking that final step and going into Taiwan. And that leaves us, the Middle East, which, quite honestly, is a massive, terrible powder keg. By the way, folks, when you hear that little whining, that's this guy. Yes, that's Khan. 13 years. This is a 13-year-old. Old man. Yes. I love you too. So when you hear all the whining and screaming in the background, that's him. Old man who's just complaining because he's old man. Anyway, that leaves us Iran. That leaves us what's happening in the Middle East. And let's be honest. What's happening in the Middle East is partially because of religion, partially because of economics. Iran did not want to see Israel complete a peace deal with Saudi Arabia. Iran knew that Joe Biden was weak. They saw what happened in Afghanistan. They saw how he reacted to Ukraine. Joe Biden's weak. This was their opportunity to attack Israel, to stop the peace deal, to give themselves more power, because Iran does not like Saudi Arabia. Yes, they hate Israel, and they want to see Israel removed from the face of the earth, along with the United States, by the way, something they've been saying for 45 years. But they want to break up the power, because if Israel was in a peaceful state, non-aggressive with Saudi Arabia, as well as the Abraham Accords, the power balance in the Middle East would shift, and Iran would lose power. And losing power also means they lose money. So it's not just religious, but it's also about power there. And Iran would lose. They would shrink because Saudi Arabia would be working with Israel and the other members of the Abraham Accords against Iran, and Iran could not survive that. They cannot overcome that. That's too many nations. Yes, they have terrorist groups in Syria. Yes, they have terrorist groups in Yemen and in Jordan and in Israel, but they don't have nations. They have terrorist cells. Not the same thing. So if Saudi Arabia were to be working with Israel, Iran loses. They lose in terms of their religion. They lose in terms of their power. They lose in terms of their economics. So that's why they took advantage of what happened with Joe Biden. And that's why they're amping things up, because they have no fear of Joe Biden. It took Joe Biden 3 months. The Houthi rebels have been attacking the United States military and civilian ships for 3 months. It's not something that started in January of 2024. This has been happening since October of 2023. We have the international documentation. So they knew that Joe Biden is afraid of having a war. He's afraid of the political pushback on it in an election year, which meant this was the perfect time to continue to push forward. Because Joe Biden is so inept that Lloyd Austin is nowhere to be seen. You mean to, every country in the world, their spies knew Lloyd Austin was in for cancer treatment, and no one was at the wheel for the Defense Department. And that's why, I believe, in part, why our response to the Houthi rebels is so piss poor. We attacked them 6 times. Several of the sites that we have targeted, we've had to hit over and over again. Why? Bad intel, bad actualization. We attacked poorly. We've only knocked out 20-25% of the ability of the Houthi rebels to continue to fight. They have some 70% fighting capability, which is why they're firing missiles at us still, which means we failed, which again goes to America is weak under Biden. You can't take out a radar site in the first try with all of the weapons that America has and all of the intel that America has, and you can't take out one terrorist radar site? Are you kidding me? This is why they're going to continue. This is why it's escalating, because they stopped Israel from being able to have the peace deal. They've endangered the Abraham Accords by raising the tensions, using the Houthis, using Hamas as scapegoats, saying that it's about religion and this is really about power. And they've interrupted the change of power in the Middle East. And Biden isn't reacting. And they know he's not going to react because he's afraid. He's afraid of the political backlash, how it's going to cost him votes, and they're taking advantage of it. Trump is not the same thing. Iran backed the hell down when Trump said, oh, yeah, the nuclear deal, we're not going to give you billions of dollars. By the way, that's cut off. The assets are frozen. You're not getting the billions back. We're not going to give you more money. Don't fire off more missiles. We are more than happy to have them blown up either by the United States or by Israel. A nuclear Iran would not happen under a Trump. And they were more than happy to guarantee that. And they knew it. Yes, Trump could stop all three. I hope that answers your question there, Grace. Let me see if let me catch up on some of the comments here, folks. I'm behind a bit. Again, you don't have to agree with me. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a progressive. Just because I'm black and Hispanic doesn't mean that I'm suddenly smarter than anyone else. Doesn't mean I have all the answers. But I have a history of what I have been doing. And you can judge me empirically by the accuracy of what I have been saying for 18 years. You can go back and track my record. You can see how good I am at what I do. So if you want to put weight on this, if you want to say, well, gee, should I believe him? Look at what I've already said. Look at what I've already covered. Look at what they don't want you to talk about. It's the same. Treat me the same way you would treat a presidential candidate. Do the homework. See if I'm actually good at what I do. And then compare that to what you're getting from the mainstream news media. And you will see a massive difference. Let me go on. Give me a second. I know there's been some conversations. User has been banned is with us. Hello, user. Glad to see that you joined us here. Okay. So I caught up. I know there's some conversations amongst several people in the chat with each other, which is great. And I'm all for it. Please have the conversation. But I'm also trying to make sure that I'm keeping up with everything you guys are talking about. And I'm, by matter of fact, let me check on Rumble again. Okay, Rumble's still with us. Because I know Rumble is absolutely more people. By the way, when I say this censorship is just crazy, there are 10 times as many people, maybe 30 times as many people, who watch the program on Rumble as on YouTube, by the way. So please remember, when I say please like, share, and subscribe, I'm not just talking about here on YouTube. It counts for Twitter. That counts for BitChute. That counts for, we're on Spotify now. If you're listening to just audio, this will be uploaded on Spotify. It means that you can do this on Rumble. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's the only way we beat the algorithms. It's the only way we beat the suppression, the fortification of our elections. You don't have to agree with me 100%. Matter of fact, no one should agree with me 100% because you have your own points of view. You have your own knowledge. You have your own opinions about all of this. That's fine. You can see other conclusions. Maybe you agree with me 60%, 70, 80, 90, whatever it may be. It's not 100, and that's fine. But be able to help us have these conversations, because we get closer to the solution and to improve things, to make things better, the more we have these conversations, not the less. Because that's what we're saying. Again, going back to what's going on right now in 2024, Democrats are trying to have less conversations. They don't want RFK to debate Joe Biden. They don't want Marianne Williamson to debate Joe Biden. They don't want any competition. They don't want to hear from their rank and file members, the American citizens, that they demand vote for Joe Biden, who has been approved by who? Who in the DNC? Did you, as a Democrat, vote for any of this? No, you didn't, because that's what a primary is for. You didn't vote and say, well, it's Joe Biden, there is no other option. That didn't happen. There's a reason why RFK right now is averaging about 10% across the nation in terms of support as a third-party independent since he stopped being a Democrat. They didn't silence his voice. Maybe it diminished a little bit, but he's still out there. And you know what? That's a hell of a big voice. 10% of the national election, that's huge. It tells you something. It should at least tell people something, but they're trying to silence that. You don't get a choice. You don't count. You're not human. I don't see any other way to look at this, is when they are telling us that we are to be suppressed, that our voice is to be silenced, that we can only talk about the approved messages that they put in front of us, that we cannot ask questions or consider the consequences of the actions of policy that directly affect us. They're telling you you're not a human being. You're just a puppet. You're a slave. What was the comedian? He died. God, he was so funny too. The Irish guy. Irish white guy with the beard. What's his name? God, I can't think of it now. Not Gallagher. What's his name? And he said that because he said they want you to be just smart enough to run the machines, but dumb enough not to ask questions. Prescient. He said that in the 80s. I think it was back in 86, 88, when he had a comedy special and he was saying that to America. And he was right. Look at what we have now. They expect you to be dumb enough to not ask any questions. Oh, the Republicans are bad people. They're not going to let people vote. They're going to stop black people from voting. What about the black people in New Hampshire? You just eliminated their vote. What about the black people in Colorado and Maine that want to vote for Trump? What about them? But it's Republicans who are stopping them from voting. No, it's the Democratic Party. It's Democrats who are stopping them from voting. Oh, well, we don't want to talk about that. You're just a racist. George Carlin. Yes, George Carlin. Thank you for that. Thank you. All right. As you may have heard in the background, my puppy's still not feeling well. Con. Stay. Wait. He's not feeling well. I am enjoying this conversation, folks. Look, how about this? After we're going to end the live stream, what I want you to do, go into the comments. And if you think I'm wrong, if you think I've misunderstood, leave a comment. Tell me, Mike, I don't think you got it right. You missed this. You don't understand this. If you're on the left, please tell me how you are supporting black votes by telling them they don't count, by nullifying the votes in New Hampshire, by preventing votes in Colorado and in Maine. Tell me how you're supporting black voters that way. Please, I look forward to hearing that conversation. How you're supporting women voters when you're telling them their votes are nullified, that they don't exist, they don't count. Tell me how it is humane that you are respecting an individual and their agency by telling them they have no choice. I look forward to hearing that. I want to hear that. And if you guys think I missed something, that I didn't get it right, leave it in the comments. And by the way, if there's more, and there's more, please look in the description. You'll see links to several other links that I didn't get to today. Look that up. You'll see a lot of other news that I think is very important, both international and domestic, like immigration, what's happening with immigration policy. By the way, Joe Biden finally admitted that there's a crisis at the border, that the border is not safe or secure. He finally admits that. But you know what he didn't admit? Kamala Harris failed. That the Biden-Harris administration failed. March 2021, Joe Biden put Kamala Harris in charge of the southern border with the clear and exact purpose of reducing illegal immigration. She has categorically failed at an astronomical level. No one has failed so bad before in the history of America. She has failed that bad, and she's getting none of the blame. Nothing. She's not being held accountable at all. Vice President, she was made the southern border czar. No accountability. Even as Joe Biden admits, it's a complete mess. It's all failed. That we have to change something. Mind you, he doesn't want his policies to end. He just wants Republicans to change. He wants them to agree with him more. He wants them to obey. But why should we obey the failure? Why should we promote the failure? Why is it? How can we expect to take him seriously when he won't even hold accountable the very person he put in charge of the job that failed horrendously? That's the question that we should be asking. That should be in the news media. That should be a conversation that every single mainstream news media is asking. Why is Kamala Harris not being held accountable for her failure that Joe Biden now admits is a failure? The border isn't secure. There are too many illegal aliens. We need to change. We need to change what we're doing. Kamala Harris needs to be fired as the southern border czar and held accountable for her failure. How can we have any confidence that anything is going to improve if they can't even do that? It's such a small thing, and yet it is the most important thing. And it tells you that it is inevitable that they will continue to support illegal immigration, that the problem will grow bigger as long as we have progressives and Democrats in charge, that their open border policies will not cease as long as they maintain power. It is inevitable because they can't even admit that it's a problem. Okay. Yes, I'm going to give Khan lots of love. Let me come. So everyone look at this, and maybe I'll be back a little bit later. But yeah, I got to go get him. All right, everyone. I thank you. Consider what I said, and I'll look forward to hearing from you again very soon.